Welcome, everyone, to The Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name is Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. Hello there to B and Annie and Laura. Laura is now a mod as well, everybody. So be nice to Laura, please. Dana, how are you? Ramajama, long time no see. What else we got here? I am looking. Yeah. Oh, well. So today, what we're first going to go over is Jen Koffendorfer did a video where she said, it's time to talk about Annie Guthrie. And so that's what we're going to do a little bit. Do you think people are being unfair towards Annie Guthrie? Now, here's the thing about it, right? I think it needs to be in between. Sheriff Nano said, oh, the whole family's cleared. They passed the lie detector tests. And it's like, well, only a district attorney should be clearing people for one, right? So with that being said, I'm not saying she's guilty, but in my mind, you also can't say, oh yeah, she's totally clear either. It is somewhere in the middle. That's what I would say. Warwick, welcome. 1.75 speed, Rooster. I must have sounded like I was on crack. Christy, welcome. Tim, welcome. How are you? So this is the video we're going to go over about Annie Guthrie. We'll see if we go over a Brian Hooker video after this, but we'll see.
He says 2024. True crimers, welcome to Break the Case. I'm your host. I'm Jen Koffendorfer. I know very often I say I'm so excited about the show, mostly because I'm always excited about the show, but it's usually because I have a special guest on. Sometimes it's the topic. I am particularly excited about getting this show underway. This show is going to be about Annie Guthrie. First of all, I'm going to start out by saying this.
B, Coffin Dagger. She's the dagger for you, B.
I believe poetry can touch upon some truths about consciousness.
And by the way, before she goes into this, please remember to like the video because likes are free. Spank the like button if you haven't already. Shadow the Night Owl gets his Hootie snacks the more people like the video and subscribe to the channel and send super chats, super stickers, or become a channel member. Those all help Shadow get more Hootie snacks as well. We just did a members only live stream earlier tonight. The members had access to that, so that's one of the perks of being a member. And in those, we talk about anything. Talk about narcissistic abuse, true crime, just whatever comes up. So anyone that has questions they want answered, that's a good place to get them answered as well. Also, usually I go live a little bit after 10 p.m. Eastern every night, sometimes closer to 11, as Laura would like to remind me. But we usually talk about true crime and current events, and I use my experience with mental health and addiction and narcissistic abuse and narcissistic family systems to give my unique perspective on those things. And thank you very much to everyone who's been supporting the channel so far. We wouldn't be here without y'all. And if you're watching this, say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat. We've got a great group of folks.
That science and philosophy may not. That was written by Annie Guthrie. I've got a couple of other poems.
And Black Sheep, welcome Otani to the channel. They didn't realize they were not subscribed, but now they are. So welcome, Otani.
That I'm going to also recite to you from her. But I really want to talk a lot about her, about what people are saying, about what people are still saying. And I did this also with the Jacks in the Idaho 4 case. I did many interviews about the Jacks. This was within the first couple of weeks, well before anybody knew about Brian Koberger, about how they weren't involved. There was no way, based on all the research that I had done, there was No chance. They were later cleared, and still people kept after them. Listen, people are still after them, just so you know. They're still not in the clear. People still blame Dylan. People still blame the Showalters Showalter. They blame the Kopaka, who's dead. Terrible situation with a standoff with him with SWAT. Blah blah blah. People blame Annie today, even though she's been cleared by law enforcement. I want to read just a couple of things she was called that I looked up today while I was preparing for this. People are saying she killed her mom. People are saying she abducted her mom. People are saying her ass looks as guilty as hell. People are calling her a witch. She actually looks just like Savannah on the side view. That's why I pulled this one. I love this picture. It shows them both, their profiles. They look so much alike. I want to pull this picture back up of oops, sorry. Let me see if I can get this one on the stage. People are saying she's a demon. Some are calling her not only a demon, but
So here's the thing. I do think it is premature to automatically accuse Annie and Tommaso like some people have done. Some people have gone really hard against them, saying, oh, yes, they're definitely guilty. Oh, that was definitely someone Tommaso knew on the front porch. And it's like, you just can't say that with any certainty, right? Now, what would a motive be for Annie? We went over this a couple days ago, but maybe envy of Savannah Guthrie. Now, in that Monk's Intrigue video, he had a comment that he pulled up that said there was a person that knew them and Nancy was concerned about Savannah and Annie's relationship. Now, is that a motive to do this? Possibly. But does that mean it definitely happened? No, it doesn't mean it's definitely happened. It's just potentially what could be an element of a motive, right? Envy. But if that's the case, why take it out on your mother? Right? That's the part that's still a little bit weird. But again, not impossible though. So I'm not on either extreme. I'm not going to condemn Annie or Tommaso, but I'm not going to go so far as Sheriff Nanos is and say, yes, they're cleared. They passed the polygraph test. It's like, well, hey, only the district attorney can be doing that. So until there's arrests and until there's a suspect, everyone's on the table, really. Like, in my eyes, the only person I truly take off the table is Savannah Guthrie. And the reason I do that is because I think part of the motive was to punish Savannah Guthrie or get revenge or retribution on Savannah Guthrie. But outside of that, everyone's open. I'm not taking anyone off the table.
A demon witch. They say that every time they see Annie, she looks like she's on drugs. She doesn't look like she's on drugs to me. She looks almost exactly like Savannah with dark hair and a slightly narrower jaw. So much like Savannah, actually. Again, killed her mom, abducted her mom, ass looks as guilty as hell. She's a witch. She's a demon witch. She looks drugged. That's what people have to say about Annie Guthrie if you go on right now, if you go on social media. That's what they have to say. I want to talk about what Annie Guthrie really is. First of all, I want to show this. Take a look at this if you didn't see this. I posted this long ago. Take a look. That was Annie and Savannah and her mom, Nancy, right there in that.
And to be very clear, sure, I definitely think that people are being too hard on Annie and Tommaso, right? People were going way too far. But that being said, you also can't take them off the table completely either, right? So I'm in between with it.
House right outside the house where she was taken. Again, that house was bought in 1975 for $85,000. I want to show this video again because I want you to look what caught my eye. Look at the vines. This is the vines that was used, I think, to grab on and hold that ring camera. I think that's what he was doing. I think his gloves were slipping, even though they're tacky. They were way too big for his hands. He couldn't get a hold, and so he used the vines. Look, watch one more time closely. You know, everyone wants to know what those vines are. I wanted to show them there. That's the vine. I'm not sure exactly what that flower is. It's not lantana. It's the wrong color, but that's even the same color. And those vines were right there that he reached around and pulled. So I just thought that was so interesting because of that. That video, I posted it, just probably 6 weeks ago now, 5-6 weeks ago. Really touched my heart sort of to see the interplay between Nancy and her two little girls. Obviously, they also have a brother, Cameron, named after the dad. But yeah, I mean, Cameron's what they call him, but he was named after the dad. He's an Air Force pilot. We'll talk about him later. I want to stick with Annie. I want to talk about who she is. First of all, she's a poet. She's a creative writer. She actually works for the University of Arizona and has been employed there since 2009. In 2016, she got a coveted Artist Research and Development grant.
And to be honest here, I am not really sure why Jen is defending her this far. I can totally defend against people saying, oh, she's definitely guilty and a witch and evil and all those things. Yeah, I can defend her from that too. I would agree with that. But to go the extra step to say, oh, yeah, she's definitely cleared past the polygraph, that's where I would push back on what Jen is saying here. And I wonder if maybe Jen wants to interview Annie Guthrie. Maybe that would play a part in this. I don't know.
Everyone, grants are hard to get. You don't just get them. You have to put in for them, and you have to show that you have something to work for and to do and to prove. A research and development grant. I think the year I saw, I think there were only 30 or 34 that have been approved, and she got one of them. I'm talking about basically a success of hers. I want to read. No, I'm going to go into this first. I want to talk to you about oracular writing. Oracular writing. For some reason, some people have chosen to take the word oracular and change it into witch. Somehow, oracular writing equals witchcraft to some people. It doesn't. It's not witchcraft, everyone. Oracular writing is, I'm going to say my terminology, what it is. It's sort of mystical writing. It's the type of writing you do where it's ambiguous. But instead of me just talking about it, I want to give you the formal definition. And then I also want to give you examples of oracular writing to show you they are nothing to do with witchcraft. Here we go. Oracular writing refers to a style of prose or poetry that mimics the ambiguous, authoritative, and prophetic tone of an oracle. It often relies on cryptic symbolism and brief, enigmatic statements that require deep interpretation. I'm convinced, and please, I hope I say this right and don't insult. I think for some people, when they don't understand something, they say it has to do with witchcraft, or it has to do with something negative. It has to do with evil. It has to do with darkness. It has to do with doing something, evil and satanic, because they don't understand it. That's why I wanted you to read what oracle writing is. It's poetry that mimics the ambiguous, the authoritative, and the prophetic tone of an oracle. I want to go on here. I want to give you an example, because these examples.
Maureen, I truly don't understand what the issue you have here is. I mean, we're talking about a middle ground between all of them. Things that Matt Murphy has said. So I don't get it. The turn I'm taking by doing what? By talking about this? I mean, I don't understand at all.
Examples are really good. This is one of her poems. This is from her book that everybody's making a big deal about. I guess they don't like it. The name of this book. Let me make sure I have it right. The name of the book. I think it's called The Good Dark. Again, what does that mean? That's the whole point. The good dark. It's ambiguous. What does that mean? Does that mean dark can be good? Dark can be good if you're a mushroom. Dark can be good if you want to go to sleep at night. Dark can be good if you enjoy wearing black. It's meant to be ambiguous. It's meant to make you think. It's meant.
Maureen said I was taking a turn. I don't know, because I'm even talking about Annie Tommaso or Annie Guthrie at all. Like I said, I'm not condemning her for doing it. I'm also just saying that until there's a suspect and someone arrested, no one can be cleared. That's a normal middle ground. I don't understand why she's so upset about that. Truly.
Meant to be deep. It's meant to be symbolic. It is not meant to be evil. There's nothing satanic. There's nothing evil. There's nothing negative about this at all. It's just people don't understand it and they've decided to make it bad. Yes, I was right. It's called The Good Dark. That's the name of the book. This is what she says about what the good dark is. It is a privacy. The way the ribs curve around the breath, a black box holding the flight data of a bird that never landed. That is her primary poem in her book, The Good Dark. That's her primary poem, explaining what she means. You guys, this is absolutely beautiful in my mind. I'm a poet, by the way. I've only been published once. It was many years ago, but I write poetry all the time to my husband. I write it to my kids. When my mother passed, I wrote and read a poem. When my father passed, I wrote for him. Poetry is at its very core. It can be so beautiful. And I'm telling you, her writings are so deep and so good. Again, The Good Dark. It is a privacy. True. What do we mean by privacy? That's when you keep your thoughts, your life, your bank accounts, your children, whatever you keep private, you keep it in the dark. Is that bad? No, that's the opening sentence, her opening sentence.
But also, chat, you can all let me know, what do you think I just said that was so terrible about Annie and Tommaso? I don't think I said anything so terrible.
What is a good dark? A good dark is privacy. It's dark because it's obscured as privacy.
So this was my verdict from yesterday. Hello there, Heather. Welcome. Jarabella, what was your overall verdict on, or your opinion on that, though? Can you just tell me, like, in a sentence? I thought it could be plausible until he started mentioning the 70% of her body in the backpack, and then I was like, no. Now he's gone too far. But until then, I thought, maybe this person's chaotic, but maybe they're not wrong. Maybe they're not lying. But then I'm like, you know what? That kind of discredited him to me. The fact that he said that. And it might have just been an attention grabber. But even so, check out Rose Canyon Lake. What do you have to lose? And if there's nothing in there, there's nothing in there. And then that's all you can do.
Should be. The second one, she said, the way the ribs curve around the breath. I mean, this woman is so freaking intelligent. The way the ribs curve around your breath. That is so cool. It's so true. Our breath going throughout. I know I'm getting pretty deep here, but these poems are deep. And it really pisses me off that because she is a bright, deep thinker, poet, that people instead want to call her a murderer, a witch, a demon. She's been cleared, people, but forget that. Forget that. Who is she? Who is Annie? I can't even imagine how this woman feels, because I can tell she is a deep thinker. Further, she says, a black box holding the flight data of a bird that never landed. Guys, that's pretty dang cool. A black box that held the flight data of a bird that never landed. I don't know. It's kind of cool, the thought. Just, what are birds doing up there? They're flying all around. What are they thinking? Why don't they land? Why do they land? The black box, referring to our black boxes in planes and things. That's pretty cool, everyone.
And by the way, I'm not for anyone calling Annie evil or a witch. You've never heard me do that.
That's her evil, deep, horrible poem. That's titled The Good Dark. People who are shallow and who never look below the surface can look at the words or see the words or hear the words, good dark, and somehow make Annie a witch out of that. That's been a lot of the thing. Oh, look at her book. It's The Good Dark. She's evil. Look deeper for those people. I know it's nobody in here, but look deeper. She's also a jeweler. She particularly has a design shop, a jewelry design shop that works, it's commission based only. And so she loves jewelry. It's funny, if you look closely at this picture, I think you can see maybe one of her works. I'm always trying to look at her.
What I don't understand about Jen here, though, is why she's acting like it's even surprising that people are going to speculate some things. Not outright accuse, but wonder. But she's acting like you shouldn't even be wondering about her because Sheriff Nanos cleared her. And Tommaso and others. But that's, like, to me, that's going too far. You can't go that far until there's actually arrests made. That's all.
Jewelry that she might have on to see what I can see. Wondering also if any of Savannah's jewelry might be fashioned by her. But nevertheless, she's a jeweler. And it's a commission business. She has multiple businesses, so she works really hard. She also is.
And here's the thing. I mean, Maureen has been a good supporter of the channel here, and she had been a member. I think she'd gifted memberships before too. So people like that, I want to give. I don't want to block them right away. So I want to give them a longer leash. And I wanted her to explain herself what she thought the problem was. It might have been a misunderstanding, for all I know, but I'd be curious what she thought that I said that was so terrible.
A director, and I believe this is her main job. She's the publicity and marketing director for KORE Press. Okay. What is that? It's dedicated to publishing contemporary literature that is written by women and transgender artists. So essentially, it started in 1993. The other thing I found out about her, which I thought was very interesting, is she's had these jobs for a lot of years. Now, a lot of people don't have a job for a lot of years, and that's fine. You know, a lot of people are looking to expand, they go in a different direction, blah, blah, blah. But when I see people that have a job for a lot of years, it tells me they're very good at what they do, because if not, they would be fired. So not only are they good at it, which you can be good at a job and still move on, but they're good at it and they love it. They enjoy it. And that's why they don't move on. So 1993, it's a long time. I started the FBI in 1990. I mean, that's so long ago. I've been retired 10 years now. It's a long time ago. She's been doing the same job because she's good at it. She's valuable and she loves her work. That's what we should be taking away from that. Not that she's a witch. And the fact that she allows transgender to write for her publications and she promotes that and markets that. So what? I've seen people make so much out of that too. So what? All right. Let's see. She was married in 2006 to Tommaso Cioni. They have one child together. And I want to talk a little bit about her personal life. She's worth, according to net worth, and I've really learned a lot about this, and I thought this was interesting. If you go on right now, look at your net worth, just take your net worth, or take, like what I did, take Annie's net worth. Today, she's worth 100,000. And Tommaso was worth somewhere below $1 million. So they're worth somewhere between 100,000 and $1 million, which to me is above average. But obviously, a big part of that is the house they own, right?
I mean, I think it's human nature when the last people to be seen with Nancy Guthrie, Annie, and Tommaso. So the last people there, their family that's close by. That's all. It just makes people wonder, right? The same thing if you're the husband or a wife of someone that's murdered, God forbid. Unfortunately, you might be the first suspect too. And granted, I totally admit when you're innocent, that's gotta suck. It's gotta suck when you've just lost your spouse and now you're a suspect on top of it. Yeah, it sucks. The problem is often it can be true, right? That's the problem. It can be a Dr. Koenig type situation where, yeah, you're trying to freaking kill your partner. So, but that's not the case every time. Like there are other instances where there's other explanations. So I think the same thing with Erica Kirk. Like if Erica Kirk has nothing to do with Charlie Kirk's death, it's got to suck to be Erica Kirk right now, right? But there's tons of people that don't see it that way with her. They think, oh no, she must have had something to do with it. I've never gone that far. But there are plenty of people who do go that far.
That house, I've seen it valued anywhere between $650,000 and $1 million. The house they own. Their mom's house is just over $1 million. So They have a house that's worth a lot. It's in a very, it's only 10 minutes, about 4 miles from Nancy's house. It's, in other words, they're doing just fine. She has longevity in her job. She has a great job. She also works for the University of Arizona. I want to make sure it is the University of Arizona. Yes, the University of Arizona, particularly in their poetry center, and particularly in their oracular writing section. This is something that is understood. Oracular writing and poetry is, well, poetry, nobody should have issue with that part. But the oracular writing is something that is characterized and accepted and in fact taught in higher learning institutions like the University of Arizona and many others. This is not some off the wall, certainly not evil, certainly not unusual, but it's in academia. It's in the academic world. Again, of higher institutions all over, and that's what she teaches. So she has 3 levels of income from the University of Arizona as a teacher, teaching this, oracular writing and poetry. And when you read her poems, you understand why they are so deep and so good, in my opinion. I guess maybe I like them. I love ambiguous writing like that, meaning I like to read something and have it mean more than one thing. That's what I take from oracular. It means you can take more than one thing from what somebody is saying, from their message. And I love to read a poem and have it be deep like that. That's just me. So I respect her writing, and apparently so does the University of Arizona. And apparently so does her employment since 1993 as the director of marketing and publicity for Core Press. Just the fact that they've been in business that long tells you a lot. And then also, she sells jewelry. She enjoys jewelry. So this is a woman who works hard. No signs of money problems. That's the interesting thing. I don't know why nobody looked this up.
So this is still interesting, though, because some people were saying, oh, do they have money problems, Annie and Tommaso? So Jen's saying, no, they don't have money problems, so that wouldn't be part of the motive, is basically what she's saying. And, I'm glad she's going over this part. But what do you think about this, chat?
Early on, her husband, Tommaso, is a middle school physics teacher. We'll get into more of that on the next show. They do just fine. They're not in money problems. They have 1 child. They have a beautiful life from all accounts. Now, I want to switch now to her relationship with Nancy Guthrie. Actually, let me start with her relationship with her sister, Savannah Guthrie, because a lot of people that, again, are saying she's a killer. She abducted her mom, or had her abducted. Not that she's porch guy, but she pulled the strings. That her ass is guilty as hell. That she's a witch and that she's a demon and she's a druggie. Okay, this is what people are saying. What does Savannah think of her sister? I'm going to give you a couple examples. First one we're going to watch. Let me start it from the beginning.
We still believe. We still believe in a miracle. We still believe that she can come home. Hope against hope. As my sister says, we are blowing on the embers of hope.
Did you hear that? Let me play it one more time.
We still believe. We still believe in a miracle. We still believe that she can come home. Hope against hope. As my sister says, we are blowing on the embers of hope.
As my sister says, we are blowing on the embers of hope. She's quoting her sister. They have a love and a respect for each other, but I'm going to talk more about that. I'm going to talk more about that right here. I'm going to tell you what Annie herself says about her sister, beyond the fact that she's quoting her. In the middle of this case, she's quoting her. Let me find. Okay.
So if you missed it before, Jen said that she had read poetry that she wrote at her mom and dad's funeral. So there could be an element here of like she sees herself in Annie Guthrie a little bit. So she might feel a little more inclined to defend her as well. That's a possibility. People are human.
Savannah has talked a lot about her sister. In her 2024 book, so Savannah wrote this book, Mostly What God Does, Reflections and Seeking and Finding His Love Everywhere. This is what she says, 2024, 2 years ago. My sister is by far the most wise, intelligent, thoughtful, creative, generous, and profoundly original person I know. Does that sound like someone who doesn't get along with her sister? Does this look like somebody that doesn't laugh and love with her sister? Remember, the reason I'm talking about this right now is because they're calling her a killer, an abductor, a drugged out witch who's a demon. That's what they're saying still. I just looked today, not from earlier, from right now, today. They're still saying all this. And they're saying the reason behind the hate, behind the abduction and the murder of her mother. Yes, I believe Nancy Guthrie is likely dead. I'm holding out, as she would say, an ember of hope, but a very small ember. Most likely she has passed. In fact, Savannah said that God spoke to her and said she was dead. She believes she's dead. I think she's most likely dead. So they're calling her a murderer. They're calling her an abductor. I mean, in what I read today, they're calling her a murderer, a killer. Actually, it was killer, not murderer. And they're saying the reason, her motive, is her jealousy of her sister, Savannah. That's what they're saying. They're jealous. She's jealous. Baloney. They have a beautiful life. They were somewhere between.
And again, though, but Jen can't say this with any certainty. And like I said, I'm not accusing them of anything. You've never seen me say that here. By the way, to make the record clear, I've never accused Tommaso or Annie, ever. Now, that being said, Jen can't know what's in someone's heart. There's many reasons someone can be envious. There's all sorts of people because they can be personality disordered. They can have other things going on. There can be all sorts of stuff that the public just doesn't know about. There can be a different story behind closed doors, clearly. So to say, oh, she definitely couldn't be, you have no idea. I mean, Savannah Guthrie is a very popular person, very successful, has her own TV show, or is the host of a TV show, I should say. Is it impossible to think she wouldn't be envious of that? No, I mean, it's a possibility. I mean, let's be real.
Somewhere just under a million, if you look it up. And I tell you, every day switches. It's hilarious. You can take any one person and track them for the next year. Depending on when you ask, they can be worth up to 10 million or as low as 1 to 5 million, the same person. So it's insane. I just did that with somebody else about a month ago. They were worth 10 million and now they're worth 1.5 million, but nothing, or 1 to 5 million, but nothing's changed. Anyway, it's just funny to look at all that, but that's totally off my subject matter. The subject matter here is the motive, because everybody asks, what's the motive? What's the motive? Well, we know it's not money. They were doing fine. Secondarily, Nancy Guthrie has no money to give. She was renting out part of her house as an older woman to gain rental income, everyone. She was on a fixed income. She lost her husband decades ago when he had a heart attack in Mexico. Sonora, Mexico. I know. It's another crazy coincidence here. In the FBI, we say there's no coincidences, but honestly, there are some coincidences. I don't know. To me, they're using Sonora, Mexico in these notes because they know that he died in Sonora, Mexico, the dad. Whoever is doing this knows this family well. They've studied them. They know them. They hate them. Clearly. And that's why they mention Sonora in the notes, because that's where Daddy Guthrie died of a heart attack. Anyway, the people who want to make all these horrible accusations against her, being evil, demon, witch, yeah, I keep repeating it because it makes me angry. And I'm trying to show the juxtaposition of, just like I did in the other case, the juxtaposition of.
And I totally agree with Jen that accusations without any evidence is not right. Nobody should be doing that. But I do see that happening in a lot of comment sections. And we know whose comment sections they are. But we do see it, don't we? There's plenty. And every video that comes out, someone's like, oh, I know that person's definitely this person. The porch person's definitely that person. Definitely this person. We go over Luke Daly's video. Oh, he's definitely guilty. It's like, no, you don't know that. You don't know that. Slow your roll. Slow your roll.
People just making crap up, the juxtaposition to that, to the reality. Let me read what else she says. So again, I'm going to repeat this. My sister is by.
Mike, thank you very much for the super chat, sir. Luke's mom is creepy, maybe. She had beef with Nanos. Did she really? Wouldn't be surprised. But that's certainly possible. Thank you, Mike, for that. Everyone else, please remember, likes are free. So like the video, spank the like button. They help me pay for Shadow the Night Owl's Hootie Snacks. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat. Good group of folks here.
Far the most wise, intelligent, thoughtful, creative, generous, and profoundly original person I know. This is what she also said. Oh, I'm sorry. This is what Annie said now. I told you what Savannah said. What does Annie say about Savannah, since everybody says she plotted this because she's so jealous? There's nothing to be jealous of. She's actually just as beautiful. If you get the right light, they look. I mean, obviously they're related. Look at their profiles. Annie said, my sister and I are like the sun and the moon. Her sorrows are my sorrows, and her successes are my successes. That's pretty cool. That's what you want. I always say with friends and with my family, I don't know if you've ever heard this before. This is just something I always say.
And Ellie says, well, there's no evidence they are not involved either. And I would say the closest thing to evidence they are not involved is passing the polygraph test. But polygraph tests are not admissible in court for a reason. So again, it's the middle zone, right? You can't accuse them definitively, but you also can't clear them definitively either. It's the middle. And I think Matt Murphy, one of my favorite people on this case, the former California DA, that's exactly what he said too. He said, Sheriff Nanos cannot be clearing anyone Only a DA can be doing that. And he had actually called out the DA in Pima County, Arizona. And he said, "Where is this person?" I think her name was Laura. But he was like, "Where's Laura?" Absent. Absent is where she has been.
I say the more successful my relatives are, the more successful the friends that I'm around are. To me, it's a reflection on me. If my sister is a neonatologist, that's what she did. She has a brain tumor now. She's had it removed 8 times. It's benign. It's in the back in her medulla oblongata. But, right now she's blind in one eye, struggles with speaking, can't walk well. She's younger than me. But she was a neonatologist, work in the NICU with little babies, trying to make them healthy. Amazing what she accomplished. I celebrate every success she's had. My other sister, a biologist, celebrate every success. All my sisters and brothers, unless we're playing tennis against each other. And then I do not celebrate their successes. No, I'm kidding. I'll still say good shot. My point is, this is how Annie Raleigh speaks of Savannah and how Savannah speaks of Annie. And I don't see anything fake about it. Nothing fake about it. See, I think I have a couple of more quotes here. This is something Savannah said about what Annie said. Sometimes the way we have found each other in the hard times is God, the 6th member of our family. As my sister so memorably put it, in other words, as Annie so memorably put it, I know when she is praying for me, and I believe she knows when I'm praying for her too.
So the Pima County DA is Laura Conover. That's the person Matt Murphy was calling out, because she's been pretty absent in this entire thing so far. And again, that's the Pima County DA, Laura Conover.
You see, they have a true kind of trinity, if you will, between God, the Holy Spirit, and each other. That's how they feel about each other. This is no demon. This is no Satan. It's no witch person practicing witchcraft. It is the ignorance of people who don't understand oracular poetry. They don't get that word. And instead of looking it up and understanding it, they've chosen to make her evil. They love each other. Their family loves each other. Nancy loved them. And they love Nancy. They've been cleared. I did a whole live on what it means to be cleared. But I'm going to go over it really quick. This is how you clear somebody. I'm going to do it quick. Number one thing I do, first thing, on a missing case, I'm going to polygraph those involved. And I'm going to see their reaction. I'm going to tell them, I'm setting you up for a polygraph. It's in 2 hours. Be ready. Are you ready? First of all, I should say the first thing is a pre-interview. You have to do a pre-interview before any polygraph. You may not know this, but you have to. The polygraphers want to see what they said. They want to be able to use that sometimes to help fashion the couple of questions they're going to ask. Remember, they are also going to pre-interview. So you're going to have an investigator pre-interview. They're going to pre-interview, and then they're going to poly. That's how it all works. So I'm going to see what the reaction to all of that is. Is it cooperative? Is it pound sand? Is it, I need an attorney? Is it, I'm taking the Fifth Amendment? There are many attorneys that will tell you, and they might be on here right now, and they might say, oh my gosh, don't take a polygraph. Oh my gosh, don't interview with the FBI. Oh, for heaven's sakes, don't do anything like that. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, if you're innocent.
But Jen should know also, like, no one can be cleared. I mean, no one can be cleared really unless it's the DA doing it. That's the bottom line. So what Sheriff Nano says doesn't really matter in that regard. He's not the person that can legally clear them. The DA can. The prosecutor's office can. That's it.
You should do it. That's my advice. If you're innocent and you know you can prove it, you know you have the data in your car to show you went to a house and you came back and you have nothing to hide and you don't have some relationship with somebody that becomes porch guy to kill your in-law. If you know you have nothing to do with it, and this is like any other Sunday night or Saturday night, except for your mom / mother-in-law was abducted the next day, talk. That's my opinion. Talk to an attorney, I guess, if you're ever in that situation, but that's my opinion. But that's what I'm looking for as an agent. And I can tell you, people who lawyer up, people who get hinky, people who get weird and sketchy, we all denote that. It's everybody's right to get weird and sketchy, but we denote it up here. We denote, well, maybe they just, in the abundance of caution, maybe they just, are married to a defense attorney. I don't know what the situation is, but it gives us a second eye. Anyway, in their situation, my point is they cooperated. They cooperated right away. They wanted to cooperate. And this is the reason why people cooperate. They want you to know, as law enforcement, we know you're going to look at us first. We're the last person to see her. We're the caretakers. We have opportunity. There's no motive. There's no means. In other words, there's nothing to show that they would have done it, but they certainly had opportunity if they would have wanted to. So they know, they're not stupid. These are very intelligent people. Savannah's an attorney. Savannah cooperated fully. Cameron cooperated fully. They never thought about not cooperating fully. You look at that. And they did from the beginning. And they took their polygraphs. And they consent.
Remember that story Ashley Banfield was going over with the painter and that older woman? And she was trying to draw parallels, basically, between the Nancy Guthrie case and that woman. And remember who ended up doing it? The person that was very cooperative in the beginning. The painter person, right? Do you guys remember that? This is probably a month ago or so by now, but it was an interesting story. But the point is, not all guilty people act exactly the same. Guilty people can act any number of ways. So again, people should be tempered. They should be tempered, especially when it comes to accusations. I totally agree with that.
It searched their houses and their cars. And their car didn't come back till later. It cracks me up when everybody's like, oh, but see, the car wasn't given back till later and it was torn up inside. It was torn up. And then on the opposite side of that, they say, see, it wasn't given back for a long time. They had to tear it up. If they were innocent, they wouldn't have had to tear it up. But yet then they say, how could they be cleared? You got to do a thorough investigation. They did. They tore up the car. They got into the brains and meat of the car that knows exactly the navigation, the GPS portion of it. I'm telling you, these cars are amazing. Braking, how far you depress the brake, the accelerators. It has so much information in these modules. It's unbelievable. They tore the car up, everyone. Everybody should be happy about that. Instead, everybody is saying that, see, that means they're guilty. Well, no, that means that they wanted to make sure everything they told them was accurate from a forensic standpoint, from forensically looking at the data in that car. I guarantee this did the same thing with their phones. A full-on digital analysis of their phones, where those phones were, who they've communicated with, any anger issues, anything going on. They've also got Nancy's, right? She left her cell phone. They've got all that information. They were cleared. And these are just some of the avenues. They were cleared. I know. It was the Pima County Sheriff Nanos that said they were cleared. He's working hand in hand with the Bureau, everyone. For those of you who have ever been on a task force working with the FBI on a high-profile kidnapping case, the Bureau is not going to let a statement like that go out, clearing the family without their blessing. I did this job 28 years. The majority of those years spent on task forces, violent crime, gang, organized crime task forces. That it isn't how it works to have some sheriff without the FBI's approval of that, period. And they did it just like they did in the Idaho case, and they've done in other cases, because of the incessant ridicule and threats that these family members suffer. And they want to put an end to it. And they did in this case really early, pretty early, within a couple of weeks. They did the same thing in the Idaho case. It's to protect, literally, Annie and Tommaso, Nancy's own daughters and son-in-law and kids, from being completely targeted. That's why. Targeted. So they're cleared, everyone. If you don't want to believe me, you don't have to believe me, but they're cleared. I'm telling you. If any of you have served on a task force, you will say the same thing.
I don't understand why Jen is going this far. Like, it's good enough just to say you shouldn't be accusing them without evidence. And you shouldn't be calling her evil and things like that. That's what you should say. But to go this far to say, no, they're definitely cleared. I mean, law enforcement people know, like Matt Murphy, the former DA, that you can't do that. So I don't understand why she's doing this.
Okay.
Oh, that's awesome, Marina. Your mom had successful hip surgery. I know you shared about that yesterday, so looks like the good vibes worked. So I'm very happy to hear your mom had successful surgery.
Let's see. Want to make sure I didn't miss anything. I didn't. I just wanted everybody to know who Annie is. That's what this show is about today. Not lies, not conjecture from people who have never met her, not from trolls who take some sort of pride or get some sort of feel-good feeling about hurting others. They're really no better than the ransom writers, the trolls that are on this, trolling accounts. And every time Annie comes up, they come on and call her a witch or a demon or a killer. They troll my account all the time. They just can't help themselves. Not just mine, they troll everybody's. So I wanted you guys to know who she was from the mouth of Savannah, from Nancy, I just, I hope that the Bureau solves this case. I thought it was very interesting. I put a little something out on this, that Savannah actually in studio in NBC, they actually now have a code word that in case there's something that breaks in the case, for them to alert Savannah so she knows. Somebody wrote that that's usual. And I'm like, well, most people don't usually have their mothers that have been kidnapped. But nevertheless, I suppose if somebody has somebody who's in the hospital or something like that, and they want to covertly let them know on stage or something, I mean, in my small, short time in the media, which I, consider myself very much a rookie and brand new at this. I've never heard of that on News Nation, but I don't know, maybe it happens. I don't know anything about that. But they have that with something breaking. And I got to tell you, everyone, it gave me a sense of some hope. I thought, why would you need that unless something is brewing, unless something is going to be changing? Why would you do that? So it kind of gave me this kind of sense of hope in a way, that maybe they're getting down the road enough that they needed to have a word out there because something's going to happen. I don't know. It just gave me a little hope. It gave me pause. Gave me a little pause to think maybe they know something. I don't think it's going to be necessarily good news. The Bureau isn't going to say anything until they're done. Nanos is under a rock right now writing because he has to answer these questions. Remember, his term is up in 2028. I know people want him to resign. I know people want him to capitulate. They want him to, say, I'm out. It's not going to happen, everyone. He's in a very powerful position. He's been in law enforcement his whole life, essentially. To become sheriff is so completely hard. And JC, thank you for gifting another membership. That is so kind of you. He's not going anywhere. And wow, thank you so much, Karen, for basil seeds. Oh my gosh, that is so great. And as soon as my basil is going, I'm actually gonna do a live outside of just my garden. It's dedicated to my dad, so I have this little thing when he passed away a few years ago. He's a farmer, amazing farmer. But that is amazing, Karen. Thank you. Thank you. That is exactly what I'll use it for. But nevertheless, that was just so thoughtful. Thank you. When it comes to what they're going through, I just hope online that a lot of you have an online presence that you can be stand up to some of these trolls, stand up to some of these people. And, you don't have to argue with them. What I try to do is when they say something off base, I'll just send them a live I did that reflects on what they had to say, or maybe the definition of oracular, or maybe, something that shows like the video or the words that are taken from their own mouths about what they think about each other, things along that line. Pug hair.
I mean, people haven't liked Jen from the very beginning. I mean, I've had people tell me they didn't like her from the very beginning. So I don't think it's this thing that she's saying that making people not like her. I've heard people say that for a while.
Is glitter. Thank you for becoming a member. That means a lot. Thank you. That hopefully you'll say something. I really try not to argue at all online and on social media. But I think you can counter different things with intelligence. And if they're really bad, you look over and they have, they're not doing anything but cluttering up your garden. If they're just a weed in your garden, which I consider the true crime community, every morning when I get up and I look and I want to do a tweet about something that's going on in true crime, I consider you all, everybody on here on YouTube, everybody on the platform for Twitter X, you guys are my garden. You guys are kind of like my mental stimulating true crime advocacy garden. And if I get a weed in my garden, typically, depending on how bad it is it a dollar weed that's going to take over my lawn? Or is it, one lone dandelion? I might just mute them. But I tell you, when they're ugly in your garden, get rid of them, block them. They're worth nothing. You shouldn't have to look at it. They're meaningless. So I hope, and you know, I remember when Annie and Tommaso got rid of all their social media, and I remember thinking to myself, man, that looks bad. And I even think I did a tweet on it, at least that they did it. I more just presented facts. I probably would too. Because right now, when I go to my garden, it's 96% flowers, vegetables, herbs. If I went to my garden and 95% of it was weeds, I probably would want to get rid of it too. And I have a feeling that that's why they did it. They could not look at it again. And they never will be able to. You know, it's been taken away from them because they've been accused. They're accused every day. So anyway, I just had to do a live on Annie. And I hope you all know Annie now. Makes me kind of want to buy her book, especially since no one seems to know, that's accusing her anyway, what she means by the good dark. I'm going to end it, I think, with two things. First of all, I want to say thank you to everybody again. All my members, we're going to have a really cool thing. So maybe my prediction of 6 months, I don't know whether we're going to hit that mark because we're already into 2 months. We got 2 months, a little over 2 months into it. But I said by the 6 month mark, within that time frame, the case would be cracked. We'll see if it works out. I remember I did this with Brian Koberger, and I said by December 31st, the end of the year. And I couldn't believe it when that's exactly when it happened. I just said by December 31st. So I'm hoping I'm right on this one, not for me, but for this family, that it can all end. It'll never all end, but at least they'll have answers. And I still stick by my statement, whether people want to support it or not. I say tickle the wire. I know how much we have in case funds on our cases, and it's a lot. And 34,000 or 37, depending on when you look at it, is a drop in the bucket to get Kash Patel to sign off. Probably wouldn't even have to go up to Kash Patel. I think just the SAC Phoenix could sign off on it. And tickle that wire, put the money in, see if somebody grabs the bait. If you don't do the last four, you know, in other words, if you don't want to get an extortionist off the street and bet the come that maybe there's some nexus, fine, I get it. We all know this wasn't a real ransom for money. I mean, we all agree on that. But tickle the wire. Put in 30, 40,000. See if some rat takes that bait. You can track Bitcoin. There is a chain. There is a public chain. You can track it, everyone. I understand at the end it could be Batman that owns it. Literally, Batman, fake address, this and that and the other thing. But there are more securities in place these days.
She's saying to deposit money into the Bitcoin account that they gave for ransom and see if someone like transfers it somewhere to see if you can track it that way. Maybe.
And they have to get the money liquid. They have to get it usable. And if they go and make transfers, they put a fingerprint on it. Cases have been solved, Bitcoin cases. It's worth it. The amount of money you're going to see, they spent millions and millions and millions. I can't remember the dollar amount, multi-millions on the Gabby Petito case. millions looking for Brian Laundrie for 5 weeks or so in that swamp. Millions. Spent $37,000. They had 100 agents on this. They're contracting people to help with the emails. Likely. And that's what we do. Contracting people to help with the Bitcoin. But you got to let somebody you got to dangle the carrot a little bit here. Do it. See what happens. It can't be any worse than what's happening now. We don't know behind the scenes. Again, to think that what we see in public is the whole case would be nonsense. There's been so much negativity. But when you look at the sources, I want you to look closely. What people say, it's like 2 people removed from anybody that knows anything. It's never the people that are on the case. It's somebody that worked in the department or somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that, is on that case. So I'm holding out that the Bureau has a lot more than we think. And that we'll know something soon.
Honestly, I think they're far away from knowing anything. And this episode by Jen was not my favorite episode of hers. I think it needs to be more of the middle ground, is what I would say. She was going too far. But please remember to like the video. Likes are free. Spank the like button or leave your DNA of choice in the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And let's see here. Most recent Brian Hooker video. We went over this the other day, but let's see what the most recent news is.
Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my show. I really, really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. I really appreciate all of the support. I am continuing to follow this Bahamas mystery. Lynette Hooker still hasn't been found. Her husband, Brian Hooker, says that he fell off their dinghy in stormy conditions. He was in custody for 72 hours. He has now been released and he's now speaking out, which I'm going to get into in this episode.
So the big thing was yesterday was the deadline to charge Brian Hooker. But the problem was they couldn't find a body. They couldn't find a body, so how can you charge him with murder when there's no body? I mean, I'm not sure the actual ins and outs of how that works, but there was no evidence, so they couldn't charge him. So Brian Hooker was released. And let's see what happened next.
Everything that he is now saying that he is out and free. Also something really interesting, which you're going to hear in this episode. I'm talking to a captain, a boat captain, who's in the Bahamas right now, who says that the weather actually was not as bad as what Brian Hooker has described the conditions were like when Lynette went missing. So you'll hear from him. I'm going to have an update on everything that's happened over the last 24 hours in the case in this episode of Brian Ensign Investigates. Hey guys, all right, so Brian Booker is officially out of police custody. He's out of jail. He walked out of the police station in Grand Bahama. You can see the video here. He was basically there for 72 hours. According to Bahamian law, they could not hold him any longer. They either had to charge him with his wife Lynette's disappearance, or they had to let him go. And ultimately, they let him go. And you can see the media was outside, and he walked out. His lawyer expected it. I was kind of unsure, sometimes this isn't America. I mean, sometimes they can bend the rules, it seems like, in the Bahamas. So I wasn't sure if they were going to have some other kind of hold, but they ended up letting him go. He, of course, has said that last Saturday, he was out with his wife, Lynette, on the dinghy. They live on a sailboat. They're from Michigan, but they were on their dinghy. That's how they got to and from the sailboat. Weather conditions were bad. He said there were 3-foot seas, which you're going to hear again in a second, a local captain who says that's not necessarily the case. But he says there were 3-foot seas and that she basically bounced off the dinghy. He wasn't able to use the engine. The engine became, inoperable, and he wasn't able to find his wife. And she is still missing up until the time I am recording this podcast, which is Tuesday afternoon. So That's his version of events. Her daughter has been very skeptical that that's exactly how this happened and is very skeptical of her stepdad, which you'll hear more from her in a second. Let me read you, though, because this is interesting. This is the actual release from the Bahamians. It says, and they put out this press release when they let Brian Booker go. It says, police wish to advise the public that the 58-year-old male of U.S. nationality who was taken into custody shortly after 7 p.m. on Wednesday, April 8th in Marsh Harbor, Abaco, has been released from police custody. The decision to release the individual was made following consultation with the Department of Public Prosecutions, which recommended that no charges be filed at this time, pending the outcome of further investigation.
So the big thing about this case would be, is there ever a timeline where you get charged or a circumstance where you get charged without a body? It's got to happen sometimes, right? But what are the qualifications for that? How does it work? I'm not sure, to be honest. In fact, it might change by jurisdiction too. Different places might have different rules when it comes to that. But what is it, chat? Do you know? What are the rules of being charged when there is no body?
Investigations. Police are appealing to members of the public who may have information that may assist with this investigation. If you have relevant details, please contact 911 or your nearest police station. They also have a number, Crime Stoppers number in the Bahamas, 328 tips. But this is the line that I thought was interesting. I'm going to read it again. The decision to release the individual was made following consultation with the Department of Public Prosecutions, which recommended that no charges be filed at this time, pending the outcome of further investigations. So to me, that sounds like this is not over. They had to release him at this time, but they are continuing to investigate. We also know that the U.S. Coast Guard is investigating behind the scenes, which I'll get to in a second. But
so the big key phrase there is at this time. That means there could be charges down the line, but not at this time. So that's the key word. And Shadow told me to remind you all to like the video because likes are free. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and come say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat. And thank you very much for all the support I've gotten so far. Remember, super chats are a great way to get questions answered and to support the channel. Same with super stickers. And becoming a channel member gives you access to the members-only live streams. And you can gift memberships too to help more people be a part of the community.
Brian Hooker did talk to the media when he left. He did an interview with CBS News. He also did an interview with NBC News. This is a little bit of what he said.
It's been 10 days. It's been a long time. I don't think I've ever been apart from her in 25 years. For this long, she wouldn't stop, and I'm not going to stop.
So that was Brian Hooker. You know, it didn't take long for him to start doing media interviews. His attorney also seems eager to talk with the media.
That is interesting. I wonder why they would tell him get in front of the camera right away. I don't know if that would be your first choice, right? What do you think, chat? Would you want to just remain silent, or would you be getting in front of the camera? Which would you do? So press 1 for getting in front of the camera, press 2 for remaining silent.
Hasn't been an issue. His stepdaughter, Lynette's daughter, who you've probably seen by now, she's been doing a lot of interviews. She's the one who sort of sounded the alarm saying something is not right here. My mom is a good swimmer. My mom knew the boat. She wouldn't have just bounced off the dinghy. And she started to talk about issues that her mom had with her husband, Brian. And there were also those text messages, which I got into yesterday's episode. Lynette had sent some text messages to a friend saying things were not going well with the relationship. She wanted off the boat. She wanted to end the relationship. But Lynette's daughter is now speaking out again since he was released. She spoke to News Nation and said that she's still concerned. She still feels like something isn't right. And she also confirmed, and this is interesting, that the United States Coast Guard is now also investigating, not just searching for Lynette, but they have started their own criminal investigation into what happened here. Listen to what Lynette's daughter said.
that they handed over everything that they gathered about Brian and his history with my mom and sent it over to the Bohemian police. And then they're going to head down themselves tomorrow to do their own investigation. Just like his criminal history of possible child abuse and choking out my mom.
So you heard they were talking about child abuse allegations. I was looking, I got the reports. There was a report, this was from 2005, when he was charged, Brian Hooker was charged with child abuse after he allegedly pinned his daughter against a wall because he was furious that her mom was teaching her creationism. And Brian Hooker was detained again December 2005 after his previous partner, Elizabeth Hasseth, called the Kentwood Police Department in Michigan to claim that he assaulted their homeschooled daughter. The charges were later dropped, so that didn't seem to go anywhere. But the actual police report seemed pretty serious, saying that he held the daughter up against the wall. But again, charges went nowhere. They were dropped. There was also the police report, which I told you in yesterday's episode from 2015. It was a domestic violence report between Brian and Lynette. Lynette ended up actually being taken away, and they accused her of punching Brian in the nose, but there were allegations that they were intoxicated, and a lot of questions too about whether they were heavily intoxicated when they were on this dinghy ride in the Bahamas. And we don't really know. Did that have something to do with all of this? Lynette's daughter went on to say, though, that if this was some kind of accident, she still is skeptical of the way that her stepfather has handled all of this. Listen to more of what Lynette's daughter said.
If this was an accident and she did accidentally fall in, I feel like he saw the opportunity to maybe lose her.
I think creationism is what the Bible teaches. There's evolution versus creationism. So the Bible teaches, oh yes, the world was created in 7 days or something like that. Evolution's not the same story. So apparently he was mad that his child was being taught creationism. So he's like an angry atheist, maybe.
And they just paddled away, or with the broken or paddle, he could have hit her and that's how it broke, or he pushed her in, and before he did that, he took off her Apple Watch and threw it in, because I don't feel like that would have just fell off. So I don't feel like this is an accident, because she's a really fit woman. She used to run all the time. She can't anymore because she has shin splints, but she does yoga all the time and CrossFit working out. So she's a fit woman. So this doesn't make any sense. And they were really smart about not going in the water when it's storming out. They stay in the boat, and they're usually pretty good about that. So maybe he convinced her that they'll be okay. So I don't know.
So you can just imagine what she's going through. Obviously, my heart goes out to her and everyone in Lynette's family. I mean, the fact that she has now been missing since last Saturday. Hey guys, this message is sponsored by Raycon. I actually have their essential open earbuds, and they haven't found the body, and no one really, that could also be very important for the police to find the body in terms of looking for additional evidence and what may have happened here. So the search continues. I really wanted to talk with someone who knows that area of the Bahamas because it's a very unique area to boat. And I spoke with Captain Bill, a friend of a friend actually knew him. He's in the Bahamas now, and it's kind of interesting. He's actually doing a very similar thing to what Brian and Lynette were doing. He retired and bought a catamaran and is living on it with his wife, but they've been cruising around the Bahamas. They've been in that area where Lynette went missing, and he gives me some good perspective into that area, and also says that he heard that the weather was actually not as bad as what is being described by Brian. So listen to my conversation with Bill. Bill, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me, since you know the Bahamas so well. I wanted to ask you, this dinghy, apparently the seas were 3 feet. It was right before sunset. How rough of a situation can that become with the weather in that area?
Well, the weather that day really wasn't that bad in that area, nor was the currents, because I actually had friends that were anchored right next to that boat, to Brian and Lynette's boat. So they said it wasn't all that bad up there. Now, if you have 3 foot seas and you're in a dinghy, that's bad news, especially an 8-foot dinghy. I have a 10-foot dinghy, and I don't like getting in stuff that's, rougher than, a foot or, maybe even 2 at the tops, because that'll really throw you around. Throw on top of that nighttime when it's dark, it compounds the difficulty of navigating. And I'm not sure if they had lights, but many people drive around here without any lights on their dinghy. So it's difficult to see. But one of the standard things that we do, so when my girlfriend and I go out, we always have a radio with us, so we can always call for help. We always have lights with us when we're traveling, and we have a bag that's on the boat that's ready for if we get caught out in the dark, you got to get back safely. And we make sure that we know where we're going. The area that they're in, they were never really that far from shore in any direction. So that's kind of a weird situation. But 3-foot seas, if it was truly 3-foot seas, that's bad news. You shouldn't be out in that. That's, especially if you've been drinking, that makes it worse.
But what you're saying is people say the weather wasn't that bad, that the 3-foot seas, maybe they weren't that high.
Yeah, that's the people that I know that were literally anchored the boat right next door to their boat. Said that the weather wasn't that bad and the seas weren't that rough. And the change of tide, if they were out there at that time, they were probably in a slack tide. So it should have been for her an easy swim to shore. If she's that seasoned of a sailor, she should be a good swimmer. And it's not all that deep there. Now, granted, 6 feet deep of water is, you're not walking on the bottom, but there was nowhere that they were more than a mile away from water that could have got down to as low as 1.5 feet, where she could have got to and stood up. So there's several little islands right inside Marsh Harbor there that they could have got to, but it's kind of interesting. I mean, I think if you're going to really examine this, do a dinghy test, drop a dinghy, at the change of tides and see where it drifts to and see. Because, even without the dinghy key, because the dinghies have a kill switch in them, outboard motors, a small boat like that probably didn't have electronic ignition and a steering wheel and whatnot. They probably just had a tiller steer.
It was a very small
outboard
motor. I saw a picture.
Yeah.
I think it may have even been electric. It wasn't like a normal dinghy motor that I've seen, like an outboard. It was just like this little, very small. I'd never really seen anything like it. Really small.
Right. There's a lot of small outboard motors. And the thing about the outboard motors is they don't have a key per se. What they have is a kill switch. And the kill switch it's basically a button, and then you have like a V-shaped prong that goes over it, and it holds it out. And it keeps the engine from cutting off on you. And then that will be tethered to a person in the boat. If that person goes over the side, they pull it, it'll shut the motor down immediately. And the reason why is they don't want you to get run over by your dinghy and get chopped up by the propeller. So it kills the engine. You can start a dinghy, even without that key. You can pull that button out. You can pull the pull cord to start the engine, and you can still drive it even without that key. You'd have to hold that button out. So in an emergency situation, and I've had to do this before. I've had, the dinghy key, came out. I've pulled it out just to test and make sure that the engine started, and it'll work. And you can run a dinghy without that in it, or you can tie a string around it and hold it out. So a little bit weird about that situation. And he rowed across. He went all the way across to the Marsh Harbor, to one of the marinas on the other side. And that's about 4 miles. That is an incredibly long row. In any dinghy, especially if you're in 3-foot seas. That would be a brutal row. So really hard to understand exactly what went on. And the only person that would really know is him, because he was there, and we don't have her yet. So you don't know, exactly what happened to her. It's a difficult situation. Like I said, I won't go out. I prefer to not be in the dinghy at night. There's times you can't help it. You're going to be, but it's just not, for a seasoned sailor, it's just not a safe bet to go out drinking and then start heading back in the dark in your dinghy, especially if you're going to go any distance at all. And they're crossing a couple of small channels in Marsh Harbor where, there could be traffic and there could be tidal flow that could move you. But for the most part, the anchorages are right up near shore, so they shouldn't have gone that far. If they went that far, they were being reckless. So I'd say at least he was reckless. And at most, we know what everyone's trying to report. So yeah. I have no judgment on that because I don't have all the details.
Right. Yeah, you're right. We just don't know. Your friends who were again, I'm not a big boater. Would it be moored? Is that the right term? Moored right next to him, right
They
next
were
to
anchored. They,
anchored.
they were in an anchorage. So
Okay.
there's mooring fields that have a mooring ball that you can tie to, or there's anchor areas where people will drop their anchor and they'll leave their boat parked. You're just on the hook. So, and that's where they were, and they were literally right next to them. So,
And what did they say anything interesting? Did they notice anything interesting with them?
Nothing. It was a shock to everyone, and it's been a shock throughout all the Bahamas chains. As soon as it happened, everybody heard about it. It just rippled through the community because we are, there's a lot of people that are here, but it's a pretty tight community, and everybody talks to everybody. So people see things, people hear things, and normally, there'd be some sort of, if there was a warning sign, people say, yeah, they were bickering or something like that. But you're just not really hearing that. You hear a lot of anecdotal stories from back home. Maybe they had marital difficulties or whatnot, but nothing seen here, and people know people, and they're like, yeah, they knew him, they saw him, they were just part of the community like everybody else. So there was nothing outstanding, or extraordinary about this couple, as far as the people that saw them, and knew. Now, what happened that night? Only they know.
For a lot of people, and I don't know your situation, but a lot of people, it's their dream to, get a boat, get a sailboat, go to the Bahamas, retire, be able to,
Right.
yeah. Are you with your wife doing it, or?
Yeah, so I sold everything I owned about 6 years ago, and then 3.5 years ago I'm on a 46-foot catamaran.
Okay.
We bought it. We cruised the Keys last year, and now we're doing the Bahamas this year, and next year we're going to go to the Virgin Islands. And and there's a fairly large community of people that do this. It is a dream, and it's one of these escape from all the craziness that's happening, shoreside, it's definitely stateside, and it's kind of a serene relaxation, purification of the soul, so to speak. And that's what a lot of us do.
Yeah. And again, we don't know what happened with the hookers, so no judgment on them, but there is, there's a police report that I found.
In this chat, we have no judgment on the hookers or dinghies, by the way.
Domestic violence, and they're, some of the family members are coming out and telling stories. And I'm just wondering, when you're on a boat with someone, if you already have issues getting along, I would imagine, and I'm sure this isn't the situation with you and your wife, but I would imagine for people who don't get along that well, like, you're in really cramped quarters.
Well, it depends on your boat. I'm not exactly sure what kind of boat they had. Our boat's fairly large, so we can get away from each other if we need to. Yeah, but it definitely tests a relationship. The psychology of being cooped up in a container with one person for an extended period of time, definitely has its challenges. And but one of the things about here, the Bahamas in particular, there's a lot of places that you can go. You can get off the boat. And this is one of the things that perhaps they were doing. They were
just like in Apocalypse Now, never get off the boat unless you're going all the way, because the dude chef gets off the boat and he gets attacked by a tiger. But the lesson, as Captain Willard said, never get off the boat. That's goddamn right.
shore going to, there's lots of little bars, little island restaurants, little towns that you can explore, great hikes on a lot of the islands. So you can get off and you can kind of, get your feet on solid ground and, stretch out a little bit, and maybe walk one direction, have them walk the other direction if you need to get time apart. But it is definitely, it can be a strain on a relationship. It's definitely a huge test, because imagine being in a spaceship. You just had the astronauts go around the moon. You can't really go, off somewhere else. You're kind of in this. And one of the challenges, especially on a boat like the size of mine, is it kind of takes two people to operate it. So you need each other in a very strong way to survive. So this spaceship requires, a couple of people, to handle the jobs, especially when you get into inclement weather. The Bahamas, definitely in the springtime, has a lot of weather fronts that come through, and they clock. The wind turns. It goes from one side to the other, and it goes around and around and around. And we get some strong gusts. We've had a bunch of gale force winds that have come through just in the past week. over the past several weeks, we've had frontal systems that have come down from the north, and they've, churned things up a bit. At that time, most of us boaters, we try to find as sheltered of an area as we can. Right now, we're in a hideout place called Red Shanks down in down near Georgetown, and it's surrounded by rocks, high rock walls, so we're shielded from the wind. So a lot of people will do that. So the boats will all cluster in certain areas. So then your community is together. Down here, we have a radio network where everybody talks to each other if they're having difficulty, if their dinghy goes rogue in the middle of the night, or if they're stuck someplace, you call and everybody talks to each other and we all help each other out. So that's one of the strange things, to be traveling without a radio and not, communicate to others your whereabouts or seek help. That's one of the things that I struggle with about this whole situation. So, but
I mean,
this is what we all sign up to.
Are you just a really responsible boater, or is it typical for people there, like the other couples that you've met who are retired, like the hookers are to have a radio and have all those precautions? Or do a lot of people, are they not as responsible as you and they just get in the dinghy and don't have any life jackets?
The majority of people are. You can't do something like this without some level of responsibility and adherence to safety protocols, because we do crossings. We go out, I'm crossing bodies of water where I'm in water that's 10,000 feet deep, 8 to 10,000, even in the middle of the Exuma Sound, you got water that's over 6,000 feet deep, and you got weather systems that can, throw you around. And so you need to be safe. You don't travel the oceans on a small boat. And, granted, mine's 46 feet long, but that's still small in the grand scale of how big the oceans are. So
Right.
You need to adhere to safety and you need to be responsible. And when you get in your dinghy, the responsibility doesn't stay on the big boat. It goes with you. Otherwise, you can put yourself in peril and accidents will happen. So you need to be ready for that. And I think I am typical. I don't think I'm on the extreme end of safety. I happen to have a captain's license, so I do adhere to rules on a little higher level than other people. But even still, I have yet to meet anybody that I think is irresponsible and unsafe. They use proper protocols when they talk on the radio. They have the right equipment on their boat as far as safety and life saving. They know certain things, like in a man overboard situation. How do you behave? How do you drive your boat? You loop around. I mean, you immediately turn toward where the person is, get the engine away from them. There's things that you do. So these are habits that we all get into our systems, because we know that we're in an environment that could be as beautiful as it is. In a split second, this could be very dangerous. So you got to be aware. Otherwise, it takes all the joy out of what you're doing. And the reason we're out here is because we are trying to experience the joy and the beauty of what we have in this world. Just be safe about it. And that's one of the things that everyone should do. And I think most people do that.
If they were out drinking, do you see a lot of that? I mean, people drinking too much and getting on their dinghies. Is that uncommon?
I wouldn't say it's overly common, but there's a lot of bar life. With sailors, we do, when the sun sets, we have a sundowner. Typically we'll get together with groups of people, or we'll meet on someone's boat, or we'll go to a bar ashore and we'll have a couple drinks. Just like it is anywhere in the world, there are people that overly imbibe. And when that happens, things can go awry. So. Yeah. I don't think it's extremely common, but everyone out here pretty much drinks a little bit.
How long have you been going to the Bahamas?
This is my second time in the Bahamas, but last time I was here was 20 years ago. But we've done this time. We decided to do all the islands. We're covering every bit of it. We're trying to cover every square inch of the Bahamas. Okay, and it's been spectacular. It hasn't been without issues. Things break on the boat. But like I said, good community. We all help each other out, and then we find out where to go and what to do. With the current technology that we all have, the maps are really good as far as knowing what the depths are, knowing what the currents and the weather and everything else. So there's really no reason for you to get yourself in too much trouble here, because technology is your friend, Starlink and, cell phones. So you can get a weather forecast and you can find out what the tidal movement is and what the current flow is at any point in time. And a prudent and a good sailor, gets that information before they go ashore or before they do anything. And that's what I think may have been missed in what happened here. So, like I said, I think it, at best, this is a horrific accident. So,
one thing that I've thought is interesting is, the fact that they had him detained for 72 hours. You would think maybe they know something, because people I'm sure there's boating accidents all the time. I mean, there's so many people in the water. I mean, I live in Miami, and, there's
sure.
Unfortunately, stuff like this is not that uncommon, and you don't always see like a family member or a husband locked up for 3 days. So it just makes me wonder if there's something they know.
I don't know what the protocol is for the Bahamas, when you're dealing with a foreigner. Maybe because of the fact that the person is a U.S. citizen, it put him in a different situation time wise. That could have impacted that.
Yeah.
So, but I don't really know why they held him that long. I know they released him today.
Yeah.
So, but who knows? Who knows what the rules are? I know the Coast Guard's involved. The U.S. Coast Guard's involved in investigating this as well. So
yeah,
we'll see.
And
the
just
hard part.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. No,
well, one thing, and this is kind of strange. A lot of people, they always joke about this, someday, you might disappear over the side of the boat. And it's said it in jest, but if someone was to overhear that and say, I heard him say that, or I heard her say that, and it's like, it's kind of a joke, but this is one of those things that takes that joke and it takes the humor completely out of it, because, like I said, I couldn't do this without Stacy. So, I couldn't, I couldn't function in this regard, without that other person on board. So there's nothing. I will do everything I can to save the both of us if it comes down to it.
Of course.
So that's one of the odd things in this whole situation.
And we may just never know. I mean, if it's a small dinghy and it's just him and her on it, and I mean, how can anybody prove at the end of the day whether she fell off or not?
Well, they got to find her.
Yeah.
It's all on whether or not they find her, and the thing is, if somehow, and that's Marsh Harbor is a fairly sheltered area, as far as it has Barrier Island off to the east, and then it has a bigger island on the inside, and then a lot of reef area. So unless she got caught in one of the main channels and taken out with the main tide, that would be she should be able to be found, so in that area, because it's like I said, it's a pretty populous area as far as boat traffic goes. And, the waters are somewhat shallow. So you would think that the body would be easy to discover there, unless there's more to the story, like he was farther out, or he was out in the main channel where she got drawn out in a heavy current draw. So these are things you don't know. Like I said, the only thing I'd say that they could do is they could do a drop test. They could drop a dinghy, they could drop a dummy in the water and see where the tide pulls it. And then, based on his locations, but there's no tracking on him. We don't often have a GPS, tracker with us when we ride in our dinghy. I do track a lot of my stuff because from some of my social media, I keep my tracks and I plot it for my hours and my distances for my license. So I know where I am pretty much at any point in time, but not a lot of people don't do that. They don't track their position. So it's really hard to say, could he been here or could he been 2 miles away from there? He didn't know. He was drinking. He wasn't sure. You don't have, landmarks on the water so much that you can say, oh, I know I was exactly at this place when it happened, especially if you're in boiling seas, churning waters, high waves, or inclement weather. It's very hard to judge where you are.
And just my last question, because I think a lot of people watching this from around the country, they don't know the Bahamas and the way you described that area. So this isn't like you're in the middle of the ocean. I mean, this is an area where there's land on almost all sides. Is that what you said?
Yeah, in a lot of these, most of the places the cruisers hang out, including Marsh Harbor, which is where they were, it's buffeted on the outside, on the Atlantic Ocean side, by an island, actually several island chains, and then barrier reefs, and then you have the main island on the inside. So it's very, I'd say you do have some containment and some shelter in there. And that's why it's hard. That's why a lot of people are very suspect. She should have been able to be found, especially if the timelines matched up. And we just don't know. We just really don't know.
Well, I appreciate your time, Bill.
Oh, well, hey,
Well,
thanks. I don't know how
it certainly doesn't help the prosecution that the body wasn't found. But who knows? Who knows here?
much I could have added to your story. I just hope in the end that this gets resolved and there's some closure for the family. But
Yeah, you
other
added
than
some good
that,
perspective, though. At least we can understand the area better. So I appreciate you.
okay. Well,
All right. Have a good day.
Well, you too. Take care.
All right,
Thanks.
bye. I really appreciate Bill for taking the time to talk with me. Obviously, stay on this story. You know, I'm in Miami, but it's not that far. I mean, it's right. You know, it's like takes like an hour to less than an hour, half an hour to fly to the Bahamas. So it's very close to home for me. And hopefully, there'll be some kind of resolution soon where they will find Lynette and figure out what happened here. But again, at this point, Brian Booker is out of police custody. No charges filed. But again, what I really zeroed in on that police statement was that they said the investigation is ongoing at this point. And we know that the U.S. Coast Guard is also investigating, which is pretty significant. And, you know, the Bahamas and the U.S. Coast Guard, I've done stories before. They have a very, very good relationship. They work together very well. So it's interesting that the U.S. Coast Guard is also doing an investigation into what happened here. So I'll stay on it. I appreciate you guys for watching. Appreciate you guys for subscribing, for supporting my channel. I've got a couple of other things I'm working on this week that I will have out tomorrow and the next day.
All right, so please remember to like this video here too. We're going to watch the Brian Hooker video. But before I begin, please remember to like the video, like I said, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat.
CBS News just spoke to the husband of a Michigan woman who disappeared on a boat ride in the Bahamas 10 days ago. Brian Hooker was released from police custody without being charged. CBS News correspondent Christian Benavidez is live from Freeport, Bahamas, and joins us to talk about it. So, Christian, what did he tell you?
Vlad and Kelly, good morning. Well, look, he had a lot to say, but he couldn't get to it because his attorney cut the interview short. We had a lot of questions for him. We asked him 3 very important questions in between our conversation with him. Just to give you a little backdrop on how exactly we got to this interview, we had agreed to an interview at some point today. And then we got a phone call early this morning that said the interview has to happen at this very moment because Brian Hooker is going to leave the area where we are in right now. And so within very short notice, we quickly were able to get something set up. We spoke to him, but we only spoke to him for about 6 minutes before his attorney said that he couldn't get into certain aspects of the investigation. Here is some of the interview, and we'll talk about it on the other end.
I want to. My goal is to go back and speak with the Hopetown Fire and Rescue volunteers, the search and rescue volunteers. They have been, I believe, still looking whenever they can, but even while I have been detained by the Royal Bahamian Police Department. I was speaking with a volunteer the day that I was detained to go out on one of their boats. They were going to take off work and take me searching some more areas. I won't be able to stop looking.
You want to keep looking for Lynette?
I'm going to need somebody with more authority to tell me to stop.
I can't see any footage of the 6 minutes. They haven't aired it.
Can you explain to me? You've seen the attention this case has had.
And more like I've heard about it. I have not looked at the news or any social media since the day before the accident, because my sister flew in to support me and said it's getting terrible out there. And then I went to dinner one night after searching, and I was approached by a freelance reporter, and I began to think that it was going to be terrible.
That freelancer was our CBS News producer who had tracked down Brian Hooker for us and asked him if he had anything to say about the ongoing search. You've seen that video on our platforms. Importantly, the things that we did not get to ask him about: what happened on the dinghy, what happened that night, because his attorney, again, cut the interview short. We did ask him a number of important questions, among them if he believes that Lynette is still alive. He said that he does, and he goes into what he wants to do next. So we'll have clips of that interview throughout the day on all CBS News platforms.
Yeah, Christian, an incredible get on
Yes,
that
well
interview. And I mean, well done. You had to try some of those questions, but obviously, as expected, the lawyer stepped
So
in.
wait, Christian, you said he's on his way somewhere. Is he leaving the country or where's he going?
The attorney wouldn't elaborate on where they're going. All they told us is that, so last evening we were told that we would have this sit down with Brian Hooker at some point between now and about noon. So at some point during the day. And then early this morning, we got a phone call that was quite pressing, with the attorney saying, we need to do this right now because we're going to leave. And when I asked to elaborate, she wouldn't say where they were going necessarily. And so we sort of scrambled just to be able to speak to him and got a few questions in before it was cut short.
All right, Christian Benavides, thank you so much.
You are looking at new and exclusive video that only Law and Crime has of police back at the sailboat of Brian and Lynette Hooker. Multiple police raiding that boat along with a canine. Brian Hooker is free, but the mystery surrounding his wife's disappearance is far from over. Hooker
So this is Law and Crime Network, and this is Chris Stewart talking here.
Walked out of custody overnight. His wife is still missing, gone without a trace after what he claims was a fall overboard from their dinghy. We're on the case presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. All right, guys, real quick, I need to tell you about this app called Upside, which gets you cash back on everyday purchases like gas, groceries, and takeout. So here's what Brian Hooker says: he is not going to stop looking for his wife. It's the first time we are hearing from the American after authorities arrested him last week in the Bahamas and held him in jail over the weekend. Let's start with this new video that you will only see here on Law and Crime. A boater sent us this, showing authorities back aboard the sailboat soulmate of Brian and Lynette Hooker. This is taking place Tuesday afternoon, and you can see a Royal Bahamas police boat there and a canine on board searching the vessel. Now, this is taking place hours after Hooker left a Bahamas police station with his attorney by his side. It's unclear what police are looking for right now, but it is clear this investigation is not over. Now, as this is going on, Hooker went on a bit of a media tour today.
I'm going to need somebody with more authority to tell me to stop.
That's Brian Hooker speaking to CBS News in his first interview since he left the police station in Freeport, Bahamas, Monday night.
Brian, what do you want to tell people who think you're responsible for your wife's disappearance?
Any response?
Brian, anything to say?
Brian, just any message you want to send.
This is video of Hooker walking out with his attorney per ZNS Northern Service, a Bahamian media outlet. Bahamian police say that prosecutors decided not to move forward with charges against Brian, but they say their investigation is ongoing. So the big question is, what happens now?
Fred Flintstone back there.
Hooker's attorney told media outlets today that her client plans to stay in the Bahamas. It's unclear whether he has his passport, but he was recorded in a phone call by his friends who then posted it online. This was before Brian's arrest, where he told them that Lynette,
Brian Hooker, said yabba dabba doo when he got out of jail,
may have gone overboard with their passports. Listen.
And then they took me to the sailboat and they searched the boat. And that's when I found out they wanted my passport, our passports. And that's when I found out that Lynette probably has them. And kind of a bummer for those guys for a minute, but they instead got the information somewhere else. And then they took me on the search and rescue boat and with the fire department, and we went around for hours and hours, and until about, I would say 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. And then we all just we headed in, and I just kind of it kind of hit me right then that we had covered so much territory.
Royal Bahamas Police told NBC News that if Hooker were to return to the United States, they believe that law enforcement here could bring him back to the Bahamas to face charges if they ever move in that direction. We also know the U.S. Coast Guard has opened a criminal investigation in this case, and they've interviewed members of Brian's family, specifically the daughter of his wife, Lynette Hooker. Now, there have been a lot of accusations made by Lynette's family about Brian Hooker and what the marriage was like between he and Lynette. Brian Hooker denies the allegations that were made by his stepdaughter that he was abusive against Lynette Hooker. Yesterday, CBS obtained text messages released by friends of the Hookers that show that Lynette said that she was going to leave the marriage in February of 2024. And when asked if the Hookers could reconcile their differences back then, she reportedly said, quote, "It was real bad. I can't be out there with him."
Day 2 of crossing the Gulf of Mexico.
The accusations made by Lynette's family, they come as a stark contrast to the life that the Hookers presented on social media. Here they are aboard their boat named Soulmate. Now, it was their alleged trip back to Soulmate on April 4th that changed the lives of the Hookers forever and was the last time Brian says he saw Lynette.
She basically just bounced off the dinghy in the middle of a little blow, like 20-some knot winds that popped up, and on a half mile maybe trip back to the dinghy, and single thing failed. Every single thing. We weren't wearing life jackets. It was sundown, and the sun set like basically 10 minutes after she fell over. Dinghy key were with her because it wasn't clipped to anything or anybody. And she had the spare dinghy key in her dry bag, which was with her.
So this is the recording of Brian telling friends what allegedly happened. Brian said that he and Lynette, they were leaving a place called the Abaco Inn, which we called, they didn't want to comment, and they were going to make their way back to their boat that was moored off of Hopetown in the Bahamas. And Brian said the wind was so strong, he claims that Lynette fell in. Here's a video posted on Facebook of someone shooting video of police, it appears, searching for Lynette the next day. So you can just get an idea of what this search area looks like from the ground.
But the waves were 3 foot, and I was trying to ship the oars, and one of the pins on the oars broke, and that dropped over the side. And I was yelling for her the whole time, and I yelled to her that I lost an oar, and I threw the anchor out and anchored the dinghy, and I yelled. I couldn't see her anymore. It was the moon had not risen yet, and the waves were doing their thing. And I saw her, I think, twice. I threw her a flotation cushion that we used to sit on the dinghy, right after she went in. But I couldn't tell if she got it or not. We've been looking for the cushion too, the search and rescue teams. But it's amazing how small a person is in 2 or 3 floaters and 25 knot winds.
Now, Brian said the tide took him away from Lynette and he did not see her again. And he says that he ended up drifting for hours and landing near a marina in Marsh Harbor, Bahamas. These are screen grabs that he allegedly sent friends who provided them to us, reportedly showing where all of this took place, according to Brian. Now, we spoke with those friends who recorded that conversation, and they said that Brian's story did leave them with questions. And one question is related to Brian claiming that he fired off 2 flares from the dinghy.
I grabbed the flares by then. I had 2 flares, and they didn't see the flares, I guess.
He said he fired off 2 flares to me. That immediately sent me out on a network of boaters to find out who saw the flares. We don't take that lightly. If you see a flare out here, everyone's turning on the radios, everyone's networking, everyone's heading to the site that it looked like the flare got shot from. That's like hearing a kid scream help in a park. Now, the Bahama News reports that no flares were fired.
Because
he stated he had a flare gun, he fired 2 flares.
Brian also said that Lynette had a bag with her, a dry bag that potentially had their passports as well as the spare key to the engine that was.
So that seems like a good point of a contention so far. He says he fired 2 flares. That person saying no, we didn't see 2 flares.
Connected to the dinghy, and when she went into the water, that bag went with her, he said.
So it's that size, you know. And anything bigger would be too big for anyone to carry, so I guess. But
Right. The standard dry bag.
yeah, it is the standard dry bag. I'm looking at mine right now, which I never had before. When she went over, she also took the house keys. When the cops were here, I had to break into my own boat. I had my phone with me. It had 20% charge. No SIM, no SIM card for the Bahamas. I just wasn't prepared, like I should have been prepared. That was this is what comes of that.
Sounds like he's doing this interview from a bathtub.
So I gotta get her back, and we'll fix all those things. But one thing I did not know is that until my daughter called me today, is that this is on the national news, and it's just. And Inside Edition tried to call me, and I don't. So yeah. Oh, what's up? So the big thing here, I don't know if it's true where you guys are at, but everybody in Bahamas uses WhatsApp, and I didn't have the ability to text any Bahamas numbers until I got that installed. So, and I had to get Google Fi. I ordered a Google Fi service to get, use in the Bahamas, but you have to turn that on in the United States, right? And then go to the Bahamas, not order it in the Bahamas and turn it on there. It just is not working. So, or tomorrow again, before my sister gets here, to go find a store that sells a SIM card.
Another question, as we kind of paint the picture of where all of this reportedly took place, is those friends, seasoned boaters, say where Lynette went into the water, it wasn't really that deep, somewhere roughly between 4 and 7 feet, depending on the tide.
And this was 7:30 at night. High tide is at 10 p.m. that night. So that's going to be, if it's 4-6 and the tide swing is 2 feet that day, that'll be 6 feet.
So maybe I was wrong when I said that before. I kind of thought they meant like above the sea line, 6 feet, but maybe it was only that amount. That seems very weird then, if it was only 6 feet.
It says between 4.3 and 7.2.
Between 4.3 and 7.2, depending on where she fell in. So that's mean low tide. So add 1.6 is what it said the swing of the tide was that night to those numbers.
And then even in, the type of winds that they were dealing with, like 18 to 20 knot winds, that's still, a very difficult swimming situation. But she seems like she was a very fit person who is a good swimmer in the water. Of course, Brian Hooker is the only person who knows what really happened aboard that dinghy and out on the water. And it's unclear what probable cause police had to arrest him in the first place and to detain him as long as they did. It is clear, though, at this point, they don't have enough information or evidence to charge him. And the biggest question remains unanswered, and that is, where is Lynette Hooker? Join us now to talk about this case, where it could go from here, is Meg Strickler, criminal defense attorney. Always great to have you on Law and Crime. So we have this moment, which is just kind of a surreal moment with just how this case has gone, of Brian Hooker walking out of the police station last night. But it seems like this case isn't over just yet. Police seem, in the way that they've been talking, that they're going to keep working. They just couldn't detain him any longer. But then you have his attorney saying, hey, justice was served. He's out of there. We don't know where Lynette is. Just what do you make of where we are at this point, how it's going?
Well, normally in a case like this, the charge would be murder. So they would not take their time to make sure that a charge like that can stick. So I think what will either exonerate him or inculpate him will be the digital forensics. Apparently he was wearing a watch. Apparently he had a phone. And then, of course, the laptops on the sailboat. All of those things, and then also all the cameras everywhere, are going to be what is going to be the real evidence that either sinks him, forgive the pun, or allows him to come back to the United States and live his life.
Because I think of the situation he's in right now. And if he's telling the truth, what a nightmare for so many different reasons. But based off what he's told friends, it's unclear if he has his passport. his attorney says that she's not sure if he has his passport. But she says that he's going to stay. He says he's going to continue to search for Lynette. He got emotional today. He's not giving up. At the same time, there are situations where if a foreign country is looking at you for a charge, potentially as serious as murder, you want to get out of there. If he has his passport, like what would the advice be from an attorney about what he should do?
My advice would be to, period. Okay. Anything you say can and will be used against you. Just stop. Stop texting with the friends. Stop conversing with the friends, all of those things. Because you'll notice those friends have now given the recordings.
You know what I think he's probably thinking? He's like, well, if I was innocent, what would I do? And I'd probably be talking to my friends. That's probably what he's thinking. But the problem for him is if he's guilty, he needs to like do things differently. And maybe, but you get what I'm saying? Like there's what you try to put yourself in the shoes of someone who's innocent and act like that. But the problem is if you're guilty and you try to do that, it just blows up in your face, right?
Of the conversations and the text screenshots to media, to law enforcement. So all of his own words are going to hurt him. But then also, like I was saying about the forensics, I think that the points where you'll see where he is and isn't will be very important. Also, he doesn't necessarily need his passport to stay or leave. But the key issue here is, what is the lawyer going to say to the client? I would say all communications need to come through me. It's issue one. Issue two is stay put. Just stop. Just stop. And let me get hold of things first. And then I'll make a decision once I'm educated on next steps.
Because I also think, to see him, and this is just kind of from the peanut gallery, which is what we are in the media, for better or for worse at times. But, we talked to his stepdaughter who said when he first called her after this, there was really no emotion, which she found was very odd. And then she had claimed that he even wanted to go back to the United States. And then she's like, why aren't you looking for my mom? And then now here he is kind of getting emotional, which is, to act.
What that reminds me of? It reminds me of Corey Richards and the night after it happened. And the brother or the sister of her husband came over and she remarked that Corey didn't really seem to be consoling the children and she was doing a real estate deal. And the sister was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like your husband just died and you're acting like you don't care and you're not consoling the kids. So that was mentioned in that testimony.
Actually, we've heard recordings of him. His family has made some very strong allegations, which he denies based on the relationship. So for him to have an opportunity to speak, like that could go just in terms of public perception, but that doesn't determine whether or not you're going to be charged with murder. Another interesting part too is in the phone call with the friends. And to your point, this was a 45-minute conversation laying everything out. He said he fired 2 flares into the air.
Yes.
And it doesn't seem that anybody has seen a flare. And to my understanding with boating, like no one would mistake that for a firework. Like you see that is drop everything and go help someone. And I think that could be really key just in terms of piecing together this narrative. I can see why, if that's a fact that's true, law enforcement is still continuing to investigate this.
Inconsistent statements allow you to move this way to this way to this way. It has been suggested in some postings from Bahamian newspapers that the dinghy was found with the flares. So they weren't ever shot off. And then you have a statement of him on a phone call saying, I shot the flares. That by definition is what we call an inconsistent statement. It allows us to then think, and then we have prior alleged domestic violence, as you just.
Consistency is a good way to tell who's telling the truth and who's not. Who can be more specific and who can be more consistent. Those are usually good signs. And again, it can't be black and white because there can be some pretty far out tales told as well. But for the most part, consistency and specifics, that's key.
Just talked about some of the families making some really strong allegations. And then you have alcohol. And so all of these things are making us kind of go, and that's why it's being further investigated. But his statements and then the corroborating things that either corroborate or don't corroborate is what's going to kill him. Remember, he sent screenshots of his little map and where he was going. If that does not comport with what the wrist said.
So in this case, this guy's been accused of domestic violence, basically, by the stepdaughter, right? Said that he's been abusive. So what could the motive be in the case? Well, one thought could be if they're both drunk, he might have just said F it and did whatever. And then just like something happened and he said, screw it, I'm not going to help her. That's a possibility. But I'm not sure if there's life insurance or other kind of money things at play here. I'll have to look into that.
Or what the phone GPS thing says, he's got some explaining to do.
He sure does. And I think, too, if he were to go back to the United States, so let's say he has his passport and he leaves, and I know the Bahamian police, the U.S. Coast Guard's opened a criminal investigation. The Bahamians gave a statement to NBC saying that if he leaves and we find something, like, we'll just get him to come back. Like, is that how that works in those cases?
Yes. The United States can open up an investigation, as you just spoke about, because these are American citizens abroad and their crime has occurred. There's either the victim or the perpetrator, alleged perpetrator. That's the American point. But then the Bahamians can also have a charge and then extradite him, because the charges there are very similar to what our charges are. You cannot contest extradition when there's similar criminal justice systems. And we are both based, I mean, I'm talking anecdotally in the sense of 200 years, but we're both based on the English system. And of course, that's a broad statement. But by definition, our murder charges are going to be very, very similar. He can't contest that.
We don't have a body at this point, and we don't know if, you know, and you would hope in a miracle that Lynette is hanging onto a tree on there are a lot of islands on the Bahamas, you know, in the Bahamas and all of that. Like, we hope that that is still happening. The truth is, can you have a murder case? I mean, if they never find Lynette Hooker, how does he get charged with anything if this is, you know, what he is saying is not true and it's something far worse?
This is the $1 million question. So they never find her. How can they charge him? Let's see what she says.
Well, I think that's the other thing with the coordinates. They'll be able to look at where the dinghy was at and where it went, you know, like this, and that'll help the search through the waters that are very clear down there. And then also, I thought of Sleeping with the Enemy with Julia Roberts. You know, did she disappear? I sincerely doubt that, but I admit I am a true crime fan. I immediately thought of, did that occur? Because she did have her passport, and this is getting news exposure. But if she moved to some one of the more remote islands down the Caribbean, you know, and then maybe changed her look, who knows? I know I'm being extreme and conspiratorial, but without the body, that is what a defense lawyer is going to say. How do we know what happened? We don't. And so
Right. So that's what a defense lawyer would say. And I know there's been people charged without a body, but I wonder what are the criteria when that happens. There has to be enough, I guess there must be enough evidence to point in their direction, right? And what would be the threshold in this case? That's the point I'm making. What's the threshold here?
We need to see the forensic evidence, the videos, the phone, the computer, all of the things that will kind of create a timeline as best as we can. And then also how much alcohol was consumed at that dinner and at that, you know, place that they were at. All of those things will help build the timeline and then help explain some of the questions that you're asking.
Right. And, you know, my movie reference, I was thinking of, not to make light of it, but Castaway, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have that scene, Wilson goes into the water and then Tom Hanks kind of drifts away. And like, when this story first broke, like, I wasn't sure if we were talking about a criminal investigation, because it just seemed on the surface, very plausible that someone falls in, they're in bad water.
So the question to you all, Chad, is without a body, what gives them enough to charge him? What would you need to see? Is it enough to charge him already? Clearly, they don't think so yet. Or if they do, they don't think it's enough to stick. But what do you think would need to change for there to be enough evidence to charge him? Open-ended question.
And then she goes, but then it's like, you know, the depth was between 4 and 7 feet. So we're not talking about very, very, you know, serious, you know, less, you know, more than 20 feet deep, even though he says there was like 3-foot waves and the water was pretty choppy that day. So like, that's another like piece of I guess, context to this story that is going to have to be figured out. The domestic violence allegations, and I've seen a lot of comments, a lot of people are saying like, why does this matter? You know, that doesn't prove anything. I mean, there was an arrest where Lynette actually was arrested in 2014 or 15, but he was accused of also being physical in that interaction. Charges were dropped. Like, How much does that actually matter? That this was a marriage and a relationship where, yes, on social media, they looked like they were living the time of their lives, living a life that I think a lot of us would like. You can just leave everything behind and go to the Bahamas and sail and all of that. How much does that history actually matter?
Well, I teach evidence in a law school. It's called similar transactions. And so the similar bad acts could come in to prove his intent. I'm not saying, because I don't know the law there, I only know the law where I practice, but that is something that definitely could come in if they want to show that that's why the intent was created, is that he has a history of domestic violence. And then they were fighting that night, and then this is what occurred.
Yeah, the history of domestic violence is not going to be good for him in this case. It's not going to help in any way. That's guaranteed.
That's what goes back to the video of the restaurant where they already starting to have fisticuffs at the restaurant, where they already having voices raised. I mean, we don't know yet, but there's so many cameras. I know there'll be more video surveillance that is already gotten, gonna be gotten. We're not sure yet.
And, just in terms of how the process is playing out, because I think from, again, if Brian is telling the truth, his attorney says that police had asked him to he was going to go out and search, and police said, hey, why don't you come down, make a statement for us? And then that turns into a 3.5-hour interview. They're like, you don't need an attorney. And then you're not a suspect. And then he's arrested at the end of that. An arrest in the Bahamas, kind of like a detainment. He's not charged. You can hold somebody for 48 hours, no charge. Then if you do an official police interview, you can extend it to 96 hours, I believe, which brought us to that Monday deadline. And his attorney said that they requested a secondary interview, which they gave yesterday as well. How much of that would actually play legally in the United States if that's how a police department went about things?
In other words, getting all those, I call them confessions.
I mean, and that's a good thing to mention here, Teresa. Thank you for putting that in there. Google says charging someone with red rum, we all know what that is, without a body requires strong circumstantial evidence proving the victim is dead and that the defendant caused it and that the crime occurred. Makes sense, Teresa? Makes sense.
Just the way you bring someone in like that, hey, you're not a suspect, you don't need a lawyer.
Gotcha.
Not charging somebody, you can hold them for 48. Oh, we've decided to hold you through the weekend, no charges whatsoever. I just found that fascinating, just kind of taking, however people think about his story. That feels very different than how things would go if this case took place in like Sea Isle, Georgia.
You got it. That's exactly right. We don't have that. We have a thing called custody plus interrogation equals to have Miranda rights. And so normally you get detained. You see that in a lot of videos that law and crime shows. There's a lot of videos that are saying we're detaining you. And they're allowed to do that and then question you. But that's detaining you is like usually by the roadside. Or they'll have you come in for a voluntary statement at the police station. We see that all the time throughout the United States. That's normal. When you're in custody is when you're this, okay? You are under arrest, 100%. So there is a very large difference, how you just described. He was in custody down there, but he was allegedly detained. So the words are different.
Yeah, definitely different. We'll see how this plays out. I mean, again, it was kind of surreal just to see him, and I think it's hard because like, how do you, the advice from the attorney, probably, zip it, don't say anything. But then in how many other cases do you see people saying, please help find my wife and kind of leading these search efforts, which is now what he says he does. But, up until the sit down interview with CBS, I don't know if they're talking to other outlets today. We're certainly trying. But he's been quiet, walking out, and that's, raised, some suspicion, fair or not. So we'll see what happens next. I mean, when was the last time you saw a story like this? Or is there any case that kind of brings to mind something like this, just with how this has played out?
Well, I think about the husbands talking, and I think about the one that was in Utah, and I'm blanking on the name. But that one, he talked and talked and talked and dug himself into a hole. And then the one with the pregnant wife out in California, that's from...
Yes, folks, please remember to like the video because likes are free. Spank the like button and subscribe to the channel. All that helps Shadow get his hootie snacks, and say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat. Very supportive, encouraging group of folks here.
The early 2000s. Again, I'm forgetting on the name, but those two cases, the husband talked and then got up in front of folk, and then that ultimately made it be much more complex for them in the future. So that's why we're saying I'm a lawyer. I got to think about the court of law. I don't want anything you're saying to be taken out of context. The same concept about jail calls. Shut up. Stop talking on the jail calls. Like, just shut up.
Yeah, and to think, it's interesting because that 45-minute phone call, and they were recording it, and they told us to help him. Now it's out there, it's on YouTube. People can listen and kind of, dissect, all of it. And I'm sure police have listened to it as well in the Bahamas and here in the U.S. as the investigation continues. He is denying all of this and just says, he's looking for his wife. So we'll see what happens next. Meg Strickler, criminal defense attorney. Always great to have you at Law and Crime. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
That will do it for.
All right, so make sure you check
CBS
out
News just spoke to
Law and Crime Network there. They got a great channel. We'll see if Ashley Banfield has anything different to say. And we might close it down here soon, too. We'll see.
Yes, I'm coming to you from my mom's house in Florida, hence the different backdrop. But I wanted to bring you this podcast tonight. It is April the 13th, because tomorrow I'm headed to the Bahamas, actually. And I'm going to start looking for myself about all of these different places that Brian Hooker said he was, right before his wife, Lynette Hooker, went off the back of the boat and he was unable to save her. I felt like the story was very fishy. Just because I'm a boater, but I'm learning a lot more and I'm trying to give the benefit of the doubt. I talked to someone today in the Bahamas who's very, very familiar with Elbow Key, actually, where Brian and Lynette were the whole day before she went missing on April 4th. And he said he was there April 4th on Elbow Key at that time. Said the weather actually was a bit blowy. And in the place where they were, just outside the channel where they'd actually moored their boat, this is frustrating. It kind of keeps the mystery alive because my friend David told me there could be some currents there. The wind could be blowing. Would it be enough to separate somebody like that? Probably not, but maybe. I was kind of hoping for something more definitive, but I'm going to go there myself and talk to more mariners. I'm actually going to be going to a marina right there at Elbow Key, and I'm going to take the route that Brian and Lynette took to spend the day in Elbow Key and the route that they took in the dinghy, supposedly to go out to their anchored boat where catastrophe befell them, according to Brian. And then I'm going to take the route that Brian says his dinghy actually drifted. But I have something I want to show you right now that I'm having a really tough time understanding that this is a guy who floated anywhere based on what his watch told those who followed him, because his watch was one of those watches that plots his course, and his stepdaughter could follow his course plotted along a route based on his watch. And she has sent it to me. And I'm looking at it saying, this looks an awful lot like the route the sailboat took from Marsh Harbor, where they spend most of their time, over and around over to Elbow Key for the day of fun, and then right back again in the exact same route, not floating willy-nilly with a broken oar trying to paddle for 9 hours. So I'm going to show you those. And again, I'm willing to suspend disbelief here because I don't know necessarily exactly the time. I'm going to talk to a captain who's more familiar with these charts and with the times and with these apps as well, just to get his take tomorrow when I get there. But let me just start from the beginning, because late tonight, just after 8 p.m. Eastern, Brian Hooker was released. You know, the Bahamian authorities determined that after a 72-hour hold, which was already an extension of a 48-hour hold, that they didn't have enough to charge him with anything that could hold him in a detention cell on Grand Bahama Island. So in the city of Freeport on Grand Bahama Island, he was at the Central Police Station. That's where he was detained. And his lawyer, Terrell Butler, was there saying, listen, charge him or release him. It was supposed to happen at 7:20 and it did not. And Ms. Butler told me she was pissed. She was waiting and she was pressuring them. Anyway, they released him. And Fox News Digital got some images of him being cleared out of the Central Police Station where he was being held. They were all prepared that if he was being charged, he was going to make an appearance across the street and then probably end up being transferred over to the main city of Nassau on New Providence, the big island in the Bahamas where most people fly into, where Paradise Island and the Atlantis and all that fun stuff is. Anyway, that's not happening. So here's what I'm guessing. He may be going out to his boat tonight because that's where he lived. That's where he lived and lives. He may be heading out to Soulmate, which is on a mooring ball, which he and his wife Lynette would rent so that they could access the Conch Inn and Marina nearby for the facilities there, the pool and the restaurant and all the rest. And that's where the boat was, the 46-foot Soulmate yacht was anchored when he was arrested and taken to jail. So he's got to sleep somewhere tonight. So who knows if his lawyer is there on Grand Bahama. She's probably got a hotel room. I don't know if he wants to spend the money on a hotel room or whether he wants to head back. Probably, actually, if I think about it tonight, he's about 100 miles away, and the ferry's 17 hours, and a flight is probably not going to happen tonight. So he's probably resting his head on a hotel pillow tonight, and then we'll make for, this is my guess, he will either make for Marsh Harbor where his boat is anchored, or he'll cut and run. If he's got his passport, and I can only assume he does if they released him, he may say, I'm out of here before anything else changes, before they change their minds. And goodbye to my beautiful boat. I'm not going to, whoa, it's either the boat or it's me, get out to some jurisdiction that won't transfer me back here. These are things he's going to have to talk through with his attorney. So a couple of other things that you should know. His attorney, Terrell Butler, actually spoke with Fox News over the weekend. And this is a super interesting answer to the question if he had ever hit his wife, Lynette. Here's the answer.
This is big. Have you ever hit your wife, Lynette? Let's see how he answers this.
He has categorically denied that. He has denied the allegations.
So this is his lawyer, not him.
And there was mention of an incident that occurred in 2015. And during that, and his wife was the one who was arrested. And he does not want to dwell on negativity.
That is interesting. His wife was the one that was arrested in 2015. Doesn't sound like the daughter said that part of the story, did she?
He has been reluctant to respond to the claims made by his stepdaughter, but he did mention that she has a medical history that needs to be looked in. She's on certain medication. She can be easily influenced, and that may be affecting what she's saying as well as her grief at this time.
Okay, the next thing I want to play for you is a phone call that Brian Hooker had with friends of his after Lynette went missing, and presumably before he ended up in a detention cell, because there were 4 days, right? He had his crisis on Saturday night, April 4th, 7:30 at night, floated until 4 in the morning on Sunday the 5th. And then he was not arrested until I think it was Wednesday or Thursday. I think it was Wednesday night. And so there were several days there where he was actually on board his boat, right? First of all, I can tell you, and I'm going to show you these messages in just a hot minute. I can tell you that he messaged friends of his to say that he was actually taken to his dinghy and took the dinghy back to his sailboat, which was at Elbow Key, and then sailed the boat or motor yacht, either motor sailed or motored back to Marsh Harbor. You'll have to look at a map to see the distances here, but it's kind of a day trip. So he was actually sailing in the 4 days between catastrophe and arrest, and probably sailed and hooked right back up to his mooring boat, because that's what he texted his friends. And I'm going to show you those texts in a minute. But first, I want you to hear this message or this conversation that Brian Hooker was having with his friends. And maybe his friends weren't feeling so good about this, or maybe they felt that it helped his case, whatever the reason.
So here's what happened in 2015. Woman missing in Bahamas was previously arrested after a domestic violence incident involving her husband. In 2015, Lynette and Brian Hooker gave sharply different accounts of an alleged domestic assault that led to her arrest. More than a decade before Lynette Hooker vanished during a boating trip in the Bahamas last weekend, she and her husband gave sharply different accounts of a night in Michigan that ended with her arrest. A 2015 police report from Kentwood, Michigan, provides a glimpse into the couple's relationship, which her daughter has described as volatile. Doesn't go on to say anything about the arrest, though. All right, maybe it does. The February 2015 report describes the spouses accusing each other of assault. though only Lynette Hooker spent a night in county jail. She was arrested on charges of assault and battery/simple assault, though the warrant was denied after insufficient evidence as to who started the assault. Interesting. Brian Hooker was intoxicated and had blood coming from his nose, according to the Michigan police report. He told police his wife, who he said was also drunk, had struck him in the face multiple times, the report stated. At the time, Brian Hooker said his wife believed a person named Jacob Hooker and another person, whose name was redacted from the report, were locked in an upstairs room and fooling around. So his wife believed Brian was fooling around with someone. It was not immediately clear who Jacob Hooker is and how he is related to the couple. Police stated they tried to contact Jacob Hooker and the other person after the event, but the pair had already left the home. When police tried calling both of them, neither answered, the report said. NBC News was unable to reach Jacob Hooker despite multiple attempts Thursday. Brian Hooker said that his wife tried to open the door of the locked room and that he went upstairs to calm her down, which was when she hit him in the face 4 to 5 times, according to the police report. He stated he had never been hit like that in a long time. He started to cry and became emotional, the report said. Police wrote in the report that officers contacted a witness who said she heard Lynette Hooker upstairs causing a commotion. She said she saw Brian Hooker go upstairs and return several minutes later with a bloody nose. The witness declined Thursday to comment on the 2015 incident, including how she knows the couple. The report says that Lynette Hooker was highly intoxicated on the night of the incident. When police brought her downstairs to ask her what had happened, she said Brian Hooker had hit her in the forehead. She said that her children had locked themselves in a room upstairs and that she was trying to get in, which is when she said her husband choked her and punched her one time, the report stated. According to the police report, officers saw Brian Hooker's red, swollen, and bloody nose, but said Lynette Hooker had no visible injuries. Mark Hunting, an attorney for the couple at the time, told NBC News on Thursday that attorney-client privilege applies to this case and that he was not at liberty to opine about it. According to Aylesworth, the couple had a history of not getting along, especially when they drank. It was not immediately clear whether the couple had been drinking on the Saturday night boat trip. Aylesworth noted that both were experienced on the water and had been sailing for more than a decade. Starting with a small 2-person sailboat and moving to a larger vessel they bought in Texas. So, what do you think about that incident? So again, it's a little bit of a he said, she said, but whatever happened that night, it looks like Brian Hooker had more damage. So that's why Lynette was arrested. Interesting. But you wouldn't have necessarily thought that from what the daughter was saying, right?
The friends released this to the press. So here he is talking about the whole cascade of failures the night that Lynette went missing. And you can decide for yourself if you think this sounds legitimate or if this sounds like a guy who is really defensive. Take a look. Quick note from my sponsor, if you travel at all or if you've ever landed somewhere and immediately started stressing out about Wi-Fi.
It really depends, Laura. It depends on who you believe, if it was self-defense or not.
They had to go see. She basically just bounced off the dinghy in the middle of a little blow, like 20-some knot winds that popped up. I think she tried to swim back to the sailboat, back to our sailboat, which was probably, I don't know, 1,000 yards or something. Just, I yelled. I couldn't see her anymore. I grabbed the flares by then. I had 2 flares, and they didn't see the flares, I guess.
So in this same vein, I now want to show you a couple of maps that CBS News actually released because he sent these maps.
Well, of course, daughter and mom said it. The daughter's going to take the mom's side. Is the daughter going to take the stepdad's side against her mom? Probably not. I mean, her mom would have to be like a demon for her to take his side over hers, I would say.
To his friends. And again, the friends gave it to the press. But this is Brian, obviously, in those 4 days where he wasn't, he was free to roam about the cabin. He created these maps to show his friends this perilous journey that he had taken after Lynette supposedly went off the back of the dinghy and he couldn't rescue her and he had a broken oar and was trying to paddle and, off he went into this blackened sea and drifted towards, Marsh Harbor shore. Anyway, I'm astounded that he went to all this trouble. To me, in my line of work as a true crime reporter, it kind of looked like this is a guy who's really protesting too much, making a lot of effort to say, see, this is where I was, as opposed to, I don't give a flying fuck, who cares? I want to find my wife. I'm not going to explain anything to anybody. I want to find my wife. That didn't seem to be it. It was more, look at my journey. Here's the course I took and here's the map. So take a peek at these maps. And it's hard for me to explain exactly because these maps they're not big enough for me to understand exactly where I am right now, but by tomorrow I'm going to know. But he has these red lines that are supposed to show where he went and where Brian's dinghy route went when he was floating for 9 hours, with no power on the boat because he says Lynette went off the back with the electric key. In any case, the reason I wanted to show you Brian's maps is because I got my hands on a real map. And so the real map is intriguing because it's a map that shows his actual course. And I have it because Brian's watch plotted a course. And his stepdaughter, Carly Aylesworth, she used to follow the course. So she was looking at the course and she was following it along. It's sort of like, it's like plots on a line and then the line connects. I'm trying to make heads or tail of it. There's a video and there's a still picture. And again, I think I need to talk to an expert about what exactly it shows us. But look, I'm just going to tell you from, my not very learned mariner's approach to these maps. I'm struggling with how perfect the lines are. So for instance, if Brian leaves Marsh Harbor and then follow the red, arrows, ends up at that big long thing way off on the right in the blue water. It's Elbow Key where it's beautiful and there's restaurants and Hopetown's there. And I'm going to take you there tomorrow. That makes sense. The arrow makes sense. He's headed with Soulmate and Lynette on board to Elbow Key. But what doesn't make sense is if Brian is now drifting aimlessly in the dark water in the little dinghy with a broken oar and no ability, to maneuver, why does the course look identical on the way back? Like the course follows exactly the same track as Soulmate did on the way there, it seems. And I know one thing, when you're blowing in the wind in the dinghy, you're not keeping a straight course. You can't all over.
Shadow wants me to remind you all to like the video out there. I think the likes might be dangerously low. But then again, the views are kind of low on this video too, unfortunately. We got to find the next big thing here. What's going to be the next big thing? This case doesn't seem to be... It's interesting, but we're not getting the peeps in here. We should be having at least 1,000 people in the live stream is the minimum. That's the minimum standard, right? Preferably 2,000 plus, of course. But right now, 200? Shadow's not very happy with that. Shadow is a little malnourished. It's almost as bad as the days that Corey Rishen's mother was poisoning him with fentanyl, and I was trying to raise money for his freaking, what would you call it? Not naloxone, but what? What do you give people when you're trying to revive them from being an OD? I forget. Someone can remind me. I'm sure they know.
For the place, and you're sure as shit not following the exact same course that your yacht did on the way there. They may have been sailing with GPS, which keeps you on course. When you sail or motor with a GPS, you kind of like, it's almost like a game. You follow the course, and if you start to steer that way, you get back on course. So your line is very, very specific. And if you return...
Narcan. That's what it is. Thank you, Autumn, for that reminder. Narcan. Narcan is what I was getting money for Shadow. And yes, we did talk about Annie in the beginning. That's probably like around the first hour into 90 minutes.
You tend to return on the same line. So those lines are right on top of each other. Now, if your watch is taking you away the hell over here in the wind, you're not going to follow the same course that your yacht did when you were on GPS under power. So this is my impression of this. The one thing I cannot tell you is if the times of this plot were exactly the times of what Brian said happened at 7:30 at night until 4 o'clock in the morning. That's what I'm trying to pin down. But once I get a good old salty mariner captain to talk to me about this tomorrow, I think I'll have a better feel for this. And I sure hope that the police have this and that they've been able to look at this and compare it to what Brian says happened and to the maps that Brian has drawn to what this watch actually plotted with GPS. I love that stuff. I love it when the electronics tell us a different story, or at least confirm a story. It might do both. So those are really interesting aspects. And of course, this is super interesting as well because I was able to get this directly from the family. And the fact that Carly Aylesworth, Lynette's daughter, was able to go to sort of the digital popcorn trail. I don't know if Brian either knew it or forgot it or cared. I don't know, but she's got it and she gave it to me. So thank you very much, Carly Aylesworth. Maps aside, I want to share with you some texts now. So you've seen the maps that Brian sent to his friends and they released to the press, and you've seen the real maps that his watch plotted. Whether they're the same time frame or not, I'm working on that. Now I want to give you the text messages that Brian shared with his friends and that his friends shared with the media. Again, I'm not particularly certain whether the friends were so suspect of him that they released it to the media, or maybe thought that his texts would help his case, but they released the text. So here we go. This one friend says to Brian, "Did we just see y'all on the news? ABC World News said Lynette fell off boat." And Brian answers, "Yes, brother, I'm afraid so. Off the dinghy in some choppy seas on the way back to the sailboat. The wind blew me away from her and she swam towards the sailboat and we lost sight of each other pretty quickly as it was just about sundown. I drifted and tried to paddle with one oar for the next 7 hours until I washed up behind the shore of the next island over and was able to get some help finally."
Let's read this. I can't pay attention to Ashley. So someone says, "Did we just see you all on the news? ABC World News said Lynette fell off boat." "Yes, brother, I'm afraid so. Off the dinghy in some choppy seas on the way back to the sailboat. The wind blew me away from her and she swam towards the sailboat and we lost sight of each other pretty quickly as it was just about sundown. I drifted and tried to paddle with one oar for the next 7 hours until I washed up behind the shore of the next island over and was able to get some help finally. We are still searching. A lot is going on right now, but I thank you for checking on us. Thank you for checking on us. Being on the news is a huge burden, and I just had my first ever news organization call me a few minutes ago. You're in our prayers. Thank you, friend. Our family is in hell right now. Search and Rescue just called and said they had searched a bunch of areas today, and no joy, they're going back tomorrow, but a storm is coming Wednesday." So what do you think of Brian Hooker saying all this?
We are all still searching. A lot is going on right now, but I thank you for checking on us. Being on the news is a huge burden, and I just had my first ever news organization call me a few minutes ago. You're in our prayers. Thank you, friend. Our family is in hell right now. Search and Rescue just called and said they had searched a bunch of areas today and no joy. They are going back out tomorrow, but a storm is coming in on Wednesday. And then the response is, "Please keep us informed. And if we can do anything, let us know ASAP." All of that happened on Monday evening. That would be a full 24 hours since Lynette supposedly fell off the boat, because they were leaving Elbow Key around 7:30 at night. Okay. So that was at 8:31 p.m. on Monday, but at 8:17 a.m. the next morning, the friends send this text: I know the pressure on you is hard. I am praying hard, and if you need to talk or anything, let me know. Do you have a place to stay on island, or are you staying on boat? Any way I can help, please ask. And Brian responds, good morning, Daniel. Thank you for reaching out and supporting us. I got the boat back to Marsh Harbor yesterday after the fire department brought me back my dinghy. I'm on a mooring ball at a place called Conch Inn, staying on the boat. My sister and brother-in-law are flying in later this morning to stay for a couple of days, and I will probably stay with them for a night or two while weather happens, but then I plan on heading back out to the site and continuing search. I will most likely definitely need help in the future, but I just don't know what that is yet. I'm trying to take it a day at a time and keep the faith. Search and rescue is out again today before some big winds come tomorrow. And the answer comes back, we are here to help any way we can, currently in Shreveport.
So the part I want clarity on is, how do you lose sight of her? Like, how do you lose sight of her that quickly? Like, how does that happen? That's the part that's confusing to me.
But our boat is on the north shore of Lake Pontchartrain. We was actually going to buy a sailboat this week and bring both boats home to Shreveport. If you need anything, I will help where I can. And Brian answers, congratulations on your sailboat, Captain, and thank you for your kind offers. I will be in touch as events unfold. I want to go back to that text he sent about the fire department bringing him back his dinghy. So I'm just going to give you a real crude look here. If this is Marsh Harbor, they're staying over here at an inn, and they've got a mooring ball, which they hook up to, and they stay kind of regularly, and they use the services of the inn. But they wanted to go over here to this island, Elbow Key. It's very long and stringy. So they sail up and over to Elbow Key. And then they drop anchor or pick up a mooring ball, and then they take their little tender, their little 8-foot dinghy, and go in and party and have drinks all day and have fun, then take the dinghy back to the boat, preparing to sail all the way back.
And that's the other thing, though. 6 feet of water. Like, that's another thing that doesn't seem to add up in this scenario. It's like, it just makes it seem like there should be way more than 6 feet of water. But those other people said, no, from where they were, that was the depth, 6 feet. So, yeah, things can happen fast, but that fast? I don't know.
Right? But the accident happens from the dinghy to the sailboat that was, moored or anchored just off of Elbow Key. All right. So his dinghy blows in the nighttime and hits this side of the shore at Marsh Harbor, and he goes up on shore and he goes through all the woods and the bushes over here to get help. And then he gets his dinghy back. Whoever from the fire department got him his dinghy back. But how did he get back to the sailboat? I think there's a ferry that goes between. So I'm sure that the ferry went, because you're not taking that dinghy. There's no way. That's way too far to go with this little 2 horsepower kind of dinghy. So he probably took the ferry and then got someone to take him out to his sailboat and then sail all the way back, because he said that he.
And remember, folks, please like the video, spank the like button, leave your DNA on the like button, and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat.
I'm on a mooring ball at a place called Conch Inn. Well, that's way over here. So he got that sailboat, right? That he never made it. Lynette never made it to the sailboat. He never made it to the sailboat. He blew in the dinghy over to this side of Marsh Harbor, and he's supposed to be on his mooring ball over here. Well, right now he's over here. So somehow he was sailing the high seas while people were looking for Lynette. I find that weird too. In those 4 days, wouldn't you kind of stay put with your yacht right there and like search in that area where she's been missing? No, he got his sailboat all the way back and around. So, okay. That's a bit weird. Why? Why did you need to be over on the mooring ball? Maybe it was expensive, but it's free to drop your anchor. You can find safe harbor just about anywhere, and you can drop an anchor. So I am finding that odd. But he did say Fire department brought me back my dinghy. I'm on a mooring boat at a place called Conch Inn, staying on the boat. So he went all the way back over here while all the search and rescue was going on over here. Okay, that doesn't bode well. Anyway, everybody's different, but that's sort of informative. I can also tell you that this has been really tough news for Lynette's family back here in the US. And they are in conversation right now, and I'm recording this at 20 to 10 at night. Just about an hour ago, they have been in conversation with the US authorities over there. Coast Guard was helping to do investigation. I don't know if any FBI officials ended up there. I can't tell you that, but I will find out, to continue their efforts on the US side to do an investigation, because if an American dies overseas, or if an American dies at the hand of another American, or a person dies at the hand of an American, they have jurisdiction to investigate, and they do. And so the hope of Lynette's family is that the American...
No, for sure. I mean, rip currents and undercurrents, they can be very dangerous. That's why a lot of people drown in rivers. Undercurrents, rip currents, etc. They're certainly a thing. It's just like when the water is 6 feet, it's like plant yourself. I don't know. Like, people can drown in freaking 2 feet of water, right? So let's not get that carried away either. But there just seems to be some stuff that doesn't quite add up with this story so far, outside of him doing it intentionally, right?
Americans are continuing their investigation, and that something may actually yield from that. That's the word from the family tonight. I also have a scheduled phone call and interview, hopefully, with Brian Hooker's attorney, Terrell Butler. She's been pretty busy, as you can imagine. So hopefully I can get a little bit more information from her when we speak, but she's busy trying to deal with him, get him out of jail and get him figured out, because he's in jeopardy, right? No matter where you are, typically, there's no statute of limitations on murder if that's what they're looking at. And if they're just trying to collect enough evidence to charge him, they just didn't have enough in this time period. You know, there's a short window. You can hold somebody and you can't hold them indefinitely. So that 72-hour extension ended at 7:20 p.m. tonight. Out he went. But where he goes is going to be really interesting. So keep a close eye on this podcast and subscribe, because I'm going to pop this content out pretty regularly from the Bahamas. And if you like it, please like it, because it really does do us a solid. I really do appreciate your support, and it does help the podcast. But that's what I've got for now. And I've got to be honest with you, I wasn't expecting this. But the closer we got towards the 7:20 p.m. deadline, the more I thought, they got nothing. They're literally going up to the wire because they don't have the goods on them to charge them. Otherwise, they'd have done it today. They didn't need the deadline. But when you need the deadline, it's because you're hoping every minute something will turn up and you can actually, effectuate a charge that will stick. Because once you charge somebody, that's not indefinite either. There's also a window there. The clock starts ticking. I can't say in Bahamian law that it's exactly like our constitutional right to a speedy trial, but since U.S. law is born of British law, and so are the Bahamians, their criminal procedure, same thing, mostly from the same tree. I would imagine they have a speedy trial statute there as well, or at least a right to a speedy trial. So if you get charged, you have the right to a speedy trial, and if they don't have the goods on you, they got to go to trial with whatever they got. So that's why they don't charge until they know that they can at least get the ball really rolling and maybe make a speedy trial. It's all a game of chess. It's a fascinating game of chess. In any case, I'm really wondering if Brian Hooker is going to stay in the Bahamas. I'm really wondering if Brian Hooker has...
He should. I mean, it's not going to look very good for him if he leaves
his passport tonight. I'm really wondering if he's eventually, maybe tomorrow, going to jump on the ferry, long ferry, probably not, flight, about an hour flight, about 100 miles to Marsh Harbor to get back to his yacht, Soulmate. Because at this point, that's his asset. That's a big asset. That's his home. It's his house. They were living the dream, sailing into retirement, on the yacht, on Soulmate. So I'm really wondering what the next 24 hours is going to bring, and 48. But I can tell you this, it's going to bring me to the Bahamas, and I'm going to update you all the way along the way. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for watching. at my mom's house. And remember this, truth isn't just serious, it's drop dead serious.
All right. Over. I'll save this probably for tomorrow. Start off with the show with Nancy tomorrow. It's just going to be the same of what we just saw, basically, over the last 2 episodes there. And we'll see. We'll see what the unfolds tomorrow in this case. Maybe he gets charged. Maybe they find her. Maybe they find Lynette. Maybe there's something else going on. I don't know. But there's all sorts of things it could be. We shall see. Time will tell, right, Tim? But yeah, I mean, unless something drastic happens, you got it, Maureen. We will be probably going over this Bahamas case again tomorrow. Or we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm always open to new cases and new things. You got it, Laura. By the way, folks, Anxiety Art Adventures is a new mod because Livin is slacking on her duties. So I decided to add one. Check out her channel as well, Anxiety Art Adventures. And thank you to Song Bits for modding as well. So Snow Baby and Rose and Jensky, Tim, Rooster, can't forget the Rooster, and Bella and OC Girl, and Bethany and Autumn Elizabeth and Deb and Sarah. No Jackie tonight. Hope she was okay. And Tamale. Glad Marina's surgery for her mother went well. Maybe Danielle might have passed out early from her edibles. But it's always good old time in here. That's right, Deb. And to Justin, too. And Annie. Can't forget them. And thank you, Teresa. And for Kev. And Mike. Where's Mike? And Dana. God bless you all as well. Shadow and I love you all. And we appreciate all of your support. Mace. Mace has been lurking, but not talking. But I'm glad you've been here. No dreaming of the Titanic allowed, Debbie. Good question, Humphrey. Love you too, Deb. Have to check you out on make sure everyone checks me out on Facebook and Instagram too. Jared Mello, Facebook, Wizard of Radical Self-Respect, Instagram. And D and DD both. Thanks to everyone who was in the members only live stream as well today. It was a fun time in there. Thank you, Dana. And thank you, Autumn. Shadow and I will sleep well. So, with that, everybody, over and out. Make sure to check out some of the interviews and the shorts that I do. And I'll be seeing you all again soon. Thank you, D.